Michael.
Are you good?
Ben should be here in just a minute.
Go.
I'd like to welcome everyone out to the regular planned commission meeting for the Planning Commission for Thursday, December 5th, 2019. And we'll call the meeting to order. We will start off with the Pledge of Allegiance offered by Valine Rollins, and she can just come up here to the stand.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much. We do have a quorum today. We are missing one or two, but we do have a quorum for the meeting. I'll look at the Planning Commission. Is there any conflicts of interest on any items tonight? Seeing none, we'll move on to 2.4, which is an approval of minutes for November 7th, 2019.
I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve the minutes for November 7th, 2019.
I'll second.
A motion by Andy and a second by Heather. All in favor?
Aye.
And before we jump into the administrative items, we are going to have a change in the order on the agenda. So after item 3.2, we will move on to item 4.2, and the reason being that it is directly connected to item 3.3. And then we will start with item 3.1, which is a request for preliminary plot approval for a mixed-use development, and we'll turn to city staff.
All right. There's a plant there, I can't see. Item 3.1. This is a preliminary plat approval. We've been talking about this for quite a while, so there's two different applications on. And we'll go over both of them. This one is for the plat for the 4 mixed-use buildings just on either side of us here at City Hall. You can see where they are here. A preliminary plat is an administrative decision. So the Planning Commission holds a hearing and makes the final decision on a plat. So you had the public hearing September 5th on this item, so there is no public hearing tonight. And then they will also need to bring back condominium plats in the future for these buildings, and those will come back in the future when they're building. So I'll just show you the plats. Again, for the 2 buildings on this side of the U Road, and then the 2 buildings on the other side. So that's just the plat. I can move on to item 3.2 if you want to just go ahead and talk about the
That's fine.
buildings. Okay. So item 3.2 is the final master plan approval for these 4 buildings. So the town center is in the mixed-use zone, which requires a master plan. They had a preliminary master plan approved in 2008, and then each pod comes back for final approval with the Planning Commission. So that's a conditional use approval, so it's an administrative decision. So again, the Planning Commission makes the decision on this master plan. So the buildings we're looking at again are the 4 buildings on either side of City Hall. And these plans haven't changed since the last meeting in October, I think, when we saw them. So these should be similar to what you've seen before. Again, the buildings, they have retail on the main floor and then condominiums upstairs. Parking is in the back. All the units have a detached garage that goes with them. This is the landscaping plan. They've got some renderings that I'll get to that are much more exciting than these drawings. So they added some stuff, you know, you guys talked a lot about the amenities and pergolas and stuff in the areas between the buildings and being able to have pedestrian connections around the building. So again, these are the elevations. And then this just shows you how they would fit, because again, if you'll remember, there's a future building on the corners north of these buildings. So this isn't the actual end of the buildings. There'll be another building on the corners. So this just kind of shows you how that would look with another building there on the corner. So these are the renderings. Kind of helps to show you the elevations and the landscaping there. So I'll just go through these. Again, this is that area between the buildings that we've talked about. They've added, you know, the windows and the patios around the sides, like you guys talked about. And again, if you remember, this is the area out here on the U Road where we have the angled parking along the street. So that's what I've got. So again, you've got two items. You're approving a plat just for the buildings, and then the site plan, which includes the elevations and the landscaping. You've already had a public hearing. The applicant is here if you've got questions from him.
All right, thank you, Bryn. If the applicant's here, if you don't mind just coming up and sharing any additional information if you have any.
Mike Bradshaw, here with HTC Communities. Obviously, we've been a long time coming to get to here. We appreciate it. I think we've got a lot of quality feedback. I hope that these elevations really help capture all the work we've done over the last, you know, really 18 months, and certainly in the last 6 months really thoroughly. So I think the suggestions have been good, and we've seen the staff report and are comfortable with the conditions. And so I don't think I have anything else to offer unless you guys have any questions of me.
All right, thank you. Does the Planning Commission have any questions for the applicant?
I have one question. So in this
Okay.
rendition of this, is the sidewalk going to be that wide?
That's actually, I know, that's what is amazing about the rendition. The sidewalk is actually that wide.
Awesome.
It is really wide there. So it does provide, I think that's what this thing demonstrated, is how much usable space it provides on that sidewalk. So that's real.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions? I think you can have a seat. Thank you. And then I'll turn to the Planning Commission for discussion on item 3.1 and 3.2. I feel like they've done a great job with the design standards and adding a lot of what we wanted to see within this development, and I think it'll add a lot to the city, especially it's right behind us by the ice skating ribbon and the park, and I think it'll be a great addition.
Yeah, I second that. They did a good job wrapping around the buildings like we asked them to, and then kind of illustrated what the outdoor seating could be like.
All right, and then just one item which I didn't see on a very good picture, but I know we probably have one. Bryn, do you mind pulling up the aerial just to show the parking that's located actually behind the buildings? Do we have one? Okay.
Well, the site plan here shows, you know, this is all the parking behind the building.
So, because I know that was a concern with some of the citizens, we do have parking that will be located behind the building as
And I
well.
can show you, like here, there's a big parking lot back here.
So that should accommodate for a lot of our needs.
Yeah, the on-street parking is not the only parking. You can see all of it back here.
All right.
Back here, yeah.
Thank you, Bryn. Then I'll turn to the Planning Commission if they'd like to make a motion at this time. And we'll go 3.1 first, and then we'll move on to 3.2 for a motion after that.
I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve item 3.1 with staff's 10 requirements.
Motion by Adam,
I'll second.
a second by Heather, and we'll call for a vote. Brody,
Yes.
Joy,
Yes.
Andy,
Yes.
Heather,
Yes.
and Adam.
Yes.
Thank you. We'll move on to item 3.2 to make a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve item 3.2 with staff's 10 requirements as well.
I'll second.
Motion by Adam and a second by Heather. We'll call for a vote. Adam?
Yes.
Heather?
Yes.
Andy?
Yes.
Joy?
Yes.
And Brody?
Yes.
Thank you so much. Thank you. We will move on to item 4.2 at this time, which is on for a public hearing. And before we do that, I do want to just sort of let the public know how we do proceed with public hearings. The purpose of public hearings is to allow citizens to address items on the agenda. Citizens requesting to address the commission will be asked to complete a written comment form and present it to Wendy, Deputy City Recorder. In general, the chair will allow an individual 2 minutes to address the commission. A spokesperson recognized as representing a group in attendance may be allowed up to 5 minutes. And this policy applies to all public hearings. And we do have public hearings on for additional items. And so if you want to look at your agenda, please don't come up and try to speak on another item during this. Let's keep it specific to this individual item at this time. And so 4.2, which is a request for a rezone from mixed use to commercial and multifamily residential. And I will turn to the city staff to start.
All right, so you can see the property here. This property is just off of Mountain View Corridor and Real Vista Drive. The entire property is about 25 acres. We're just talking about rezoning. It's about 7 acres. You can see the mixed use on the side there. If you remember, we rezoned, you recommended rezoning the piece just across the street a month or two ago, and the council will act on both of these probably at their next meeting in January. So again, this is the proposal. To just eliminate the piece of mixed use on that side, make it all commercial, and then with just a small, it's about 3.5 acres of RM for a residential component of this plan. I can go ahead and show you the site plan here again, just to show how it corresponds. So again, the whole thing is commercial, retail, with again, a parking structure, similar to the other side, and then this small component of residential as part of the entire project. So you've got the 2 items on. This first one is just for the zoning, and as you said, this is a public hearing.
Thank you, Bryn. If the applicant's here. So the applicant's not here at this time, then we'll open up the public hearing at this time. All right, thank you. We will close the public hearing at this time and turn to the Planning Commission. And just to make a note, this item has been going back and forth for a number of months between work meetings with the Council, Planning Commission, and also the Planning Commission. So if there's any comments from the Planning Commission on this item.
There's confusion.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Okay. Then let me see.
Open it back up.
I'm going to open up the public hearing again at this time. I'm so sorry. You can just come up to the podium and then just state your name, please.
My name is Michael Miller. I own a condominium just to the, I believe, the north of the, can you put the map back up? Is that possible to do? In the edge condos, just, in that area right there. And right now, the only way to get in and out of that is through, I believe, Autumn Spring Drive, right? So I just want to, I understand the commission's need for additional commercial property in the city. My concern is that you're changing it. It's a pretty drastic change from going from mixed use 2, which does not allow big box retail, to commercial 2, which does, my understanding it does. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but that's quite a drastic change for that piece of property right there. The pod 35 isn't as concerning because there are other condominiums in the area, but I think that changing that from mixed use 2 to C2 is going to be a drastic shift of the landscape in that area. It's going to bring a lot of additional traffic to the area, and for that reason, I'm opposed to the proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry about that misunderstanding. If there's anyone else from the public at this time to address this item. All right, at this time, I will close the public hearing, and we'll turn to the Planning Commission for discussion.
So maybe to kind of help a little bit with this resident's concerns, right adjacent to that, that is where they are looking to do some residential as well. So I think that'll help
Yeah, I
provide a
think
little
he's
bit of a
talking about
buffer. Yeah, he's talking there, and
Here,
so,
and then this road comes down here.
Right.
The residential.
so we do have the residential there, and there are some planned, you know, commercial here. It's not going to be a large box, big box at all. That's not what they're proposing here, and that'll come up in the other item that you'll be seeing as well. So just want to make you aware that there's not going to be these large box. So I think the buffer that they're doing with the parking structure and the residential, I think will provide a good transition from the mixed use that you're in to the commercial as well. So that's my
Well,
My
no,
thoughts as well.
time it did.
I do think the majority of the traffic will come off Autumn Crest and Real Vista Drive as well.
correct.
There's really no, sorry, excuse me, there's really no access other than
That-
the 35A and B and that lower level that even uses Autumn Spring Drive.
Yeah, to get to the parking structure, correct.
Any additional comments from the Planning Commission?
I think you need to close the public hearing.
Oh, I did
Oh, you
close
did
the
close-
public
the second time you
Yeah,
closed it?
I did.
I didn't hear you.
All right. And then I will turn to the Planning Commission for a motion at this time.
I'll go ahead and make a motion to recommend approval of item 4.2 to the City Council for rezoning from MU2 mixed use to C2 commercial and RM multifamily residential for the proposed development known as Academy Village.
A motion by Andy
I'll second.
and a second by Joy. I will call for a vote. Brody,
Yes.
Joy,
Yes.
Andy,
Yes.
Heather,
Yes.
and Adam.
Yes.
Thank you so much. We will now move on to item 3.3, which is a request for conditional use approval for a mixed-use commercial center known as Academy Village, and then we'll turn to city staff.
All right, so again, this is the same property that we were just talking about. So again, it's about 25 acres, known as Pod 35. It's very similar to the pod we approved a couple weeks ago. Again, this is currently part of the Rosecrest Master Development Agreement. We will be amending the Rosecrest Master Development Agreement to remove this property, and then amending the South Hills Master Development Agreement to add this property. That will be going to council along with the rezone. So again, here's the entire site. Again, it's about 50 acres. The entire site, we approved the southern, the right side, a few weeks ago, and now we're talking about the northern side, Pod 35. So again, there's a parking structure on this one as well, a small component of residential, and then some smaller retail uses. This is a proposed grocery store in this location.
Okay. Thank you, Bryn. And we will turn, well, the applicant's not here at this time, but if the applicant is here, we'll give him time. It looks like he's still not here, so we will turn to the Planning Commission on this one, as this is not open for public hearing.
I'll make a motion to make a request for conditional use approval of item 3.3.
I'll second.
Motion by Brody, a second by Heather, and then we'll call for a vote. Adam?
Yes.
Heather?
Yes.
Andy?
Yes.
Joy?
Yes.
And Brody.
Yes.
Then we will move on to item 3.4, which is also on for a public hearing. It's a preliminary plot for a two-lot subdivision to create a flag lot. And we'll turn the time to the city staff.
This is actually not on for a public hearing.
Oh.
We had the public hearing last time.
So it was, oh, sorry.
That's
Yep,
okay.
That's correct.
So this is a flag lot. This was on a couple weeks ago, and we had some questions, so we've got it back. So again, we already did have the public hearing. Just proposing to create one flag lot in the back with a drive up the south side here. Each lot is over half an acre, meets all the requirements of a flag lot. The question that came up last time was the road. Couple questions, I guess, whether it was paved and then whether it was a public or a private road. You can see here that the pavement ends about here-ish. You can see it here, it ends about here. So there's probably about 10 feet from the actual property line where that's not paved. So they'd be required to pave that. And then also, as we talked about in the work meeting, we did a lot of research, and everything we can find shows that this is in fact a dedicated road. We checked the plats and the deeds for all the surrounding parcels, and it is indeed a public road. So we're not concerned with the private road there, so.
Go back to that photo again.
Which one? That one?
What does that sign say? There must be something on the lens. Did it?
The dead end, yeah.
All right, thank you, Bryn. If we could have the applicant come up and just state your name and any additional information. We have a bigger crowd than last time for you.
Kevin Van Buge, and that is just the dead-end sign for the road that goes through. People come down that street all the time and have to turn around and head back out, but I have nothing to add other than, the question was about that being a private road, and there has been engineering as far as the drainage system, and that's designed to go down in through the school from when I put my curb and gutter in way back when I built the house originally. So,
When you originally built, did you build your curb and gutter all the way to your property line, or? is
yes,
there
I
10
built the
feet
curb and
gap?
gutter all the way to the property line.
Any additional questions for the applicant? Thank you so much. I think you can have a seat.
Okay, thanks.
Then I'll turn to the Planning Commission for discussion or a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve item 3.4 with staff's 9 recommendations.
Motion by Heather,
I'll second.
second by Andy. We'll call for a vote. Brody,
Yes.
Joy,
Yes.
Andy,
Yes.
Heather,
Yes.
and Adam.
Yes.
That is passed, and we move on to legislative items. Legislative items are all recommendations made to the City Council from the City Planning Commission. All of these items, let me check, yep, all of the items are on for public hearings, and so we will make that available for citizens' comment, and we will start with item 4.1, which is a request for a rezone property from A1 agricultural 1 acre to a 0.25, and we'll turn to the city staff.
All right, so this is a rezone. This property is located out on 7530 West, about 13400 South. You can see it here. It's three different addresses, 3 different parcels there. They are requesting to rezone from A1 to A.25. As you said, this is a public hearing. They have about 4.5 acres. At this point, they're not asking for a subdivision, just the rezone. Again, a rezone is a legislative decision, like you said. The applicant is required to have a neighborhood meeting. They had one November 13th. And then the Planning Commission holds a public hearing and makes a recommendation to the council. Council will then make the final decision on the rezone. So the general plan is the one thing you want to look at when you're looking at the rezone. This is the general plan for this area, which shows the property is agricultural, residential. So the 8.25 zone would be consistent with that. This is a proposed site plan that the applicant submitted just to kind of show his idea. Obviously, he would probably do some, a cul-de-sac, not really any other way to do it. This is showing 14 lots. The 8.25 zone allows a density of 1.8 units per acre, up to a maximum of 2.5 units per acre if they can meet some of the density criteria. Things like improvements on the road, system improvements, half-acre lots, that kind of stuff. This property would likely not qualify for, could qualify for a couple of these, so maybe about 2 units per acre, so they're probably looking at the most about 9, maybe 10 lots on the property. Staff is recommending approval with a zoning condition to require half acres along the west side adjacent to High Country. And again, this is a public hearing.
Thank you, Bryn. If the applicant's here and would like to come up and share any additional information.
Steve O'Weiler, that pretty well covers what my plans are. I've looked into selling the property with a house on it and that, and because it has a log home on it, what should I say, the sale of it is not near what the property is worth, and therefore I've decided that we would look into subdividing it, doing a paper subdivision on it, and then finding a developer for it. It does have 2 homes on it presently, one back on the back where 1/2 acre would be, and the other one down on the south side about halfway.
All right, thank you. And do you mind just stating your name for the record?
Pardon?
Do you mind just stating your name for the record?
Yeah, I thought I did. Steve O'Weiler.
Okay, I might have missed it. Thank you.
You bet.
Any questions for the applicant?
I don't.
Are you
Hey.
are you planning on leaving the houses where they're at? Are you going to keep them there and sell them?
The one house, my son-in-law lives in that, and he plans on staying in that house. The other house, it'll depend on the developer. Being a log home, it's not going to fit into a subdivision real well, so they may just take it down. I don't know at this point.
Okay, thanks.
And if the developer wants the whole 5 acres with both homes, then we may go that way also. Okay?
Thank you. I think you can have a seat. Thank you. I'll turn to actually the public I'll open up the public hearing at this time. And if you don't mind just stating your name when you come up, that'd be great.
My name's Jerry Cohn, and I live directly across the street, and I have no particular objection to them developing it. My biggest concern is the amount of traffic that's going to be added to an already crowded roads. So when I moved out there in 1991, it was a dirt road, now it's turned into Redwood Road, and I just, what is it? 14 more homes, 14 more cars coming on the road in the morning, and I guess I can live with that. But the other thing is the road that comes out of there off of that circle, I would prefer that lines up with Havana Drive instead of the cars are coming down that grade right into my front yard in the winter. So, and that's all I have to say. So, thank you.
Thank you so much. Seeing no other public comments, we'll close the public hearing at this time and turn to the Planning Commission for comments.
So a couple quick questions I guess I have. So Bryn, you'd mentioned that we'd probably only get 8, 9, maybe 10. Is that taking into account the 1/2 acre on the west end of that property as well? Requiring the 1/2 acre lots? Was that
No,
considered
that's
as part
just
of that?
purely looking
That's-
at
Right,
the density.
right. So it's likely going to have,
It would likely be with the
Probably on
1/2
the low-
acres, yeah, 8 or 9 at the most, probably, yeah.
And then another question in regards to the concern here with lining up with Havana, will it not be, I mean, it'll be a city's requirement to line those up, correct?
Yeah,
When
engineer's
that
gonna
does come.
require those to line
The engineer
up,
will
yeah.
require that, so just to address that concern.
So Bryn, my only question is I understand that we would put a ZC to put in a 1/2 acre lot buffer, but I don't know why we're doing a ZC on 2 units per acre.
So,
So can you explain to me?
Yes.
'Cause
because you can only do zoning conditions for certain things, and we can do zoning conditions for density, we can't do zoning conditions for lot size.
Gotcha.
So,
But can you
it's
go back?
kind of a way around it that you have to do it.
Could we do 1.9 though? Because I thought in our,
1.9 on the whole thing?
I'm just saying, if you look at our metric that we have, the only thing I get there, they would be putting in 1/2 acres. I don't know where it is. One more, I think.
Where am I at?
Right
Here?
there. I get that they'd be putting in the 1/2 acres, which is only 0.1. So that's what I'm saying is I could understand that we would justify a 1.9. But I don't see what else they're doing to justify or another 0.1 to take it to 2.
No, no, I don't believe there's another one that they could do.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think it should be 1.9.
Okay. Any other comments from the Planning Commission? Thank you, Adam.
So you're saying 1.9 over the whole thing?
Yep.
So I'm ready if you guys have any questions. I'm ready to make a motion.
And just to make a note, this is just a recommendation to the city council for a rezone. So it's not actually the development that will go in there at this time. It's just a rezone, and then they'll come back to the planning commission with the amount of homes and the street layouts and everything else at a later time.
So I would like to make a motion to recommend to city council approval of item 4.1 with staff's recommendations with an alteration to, with a zoning condition of 1.9 units per acre requiring 1/2 acre lots as buffers along the west side of the property.
I'll second that.
Motion by Adam, a second by Brody, and we'll call for a vote. Adam?
Yes.
Heather?
Yes.
Andy?
Yes.
Joy?
Yes.
And Brody?
Yes.
Thank you so much. Well, now, since we've already addressed item 4.2, we'll move on to item 4.3, which is a request for a general plan amendment to change property from low-density residential and commercial to medium-density residential, and we'll turn to city staff.
All right. I'll kind of address item 4.3, 4.4, and 4.5 a little bit together, just so we're clear on what all the applications are. So item 4.3 is a general plan amendment to change the property from, it's currently low-density residential and commercial to medium-density residential. The general plan amendment is a legislative decision. Applicants required to hold an open house. They've had 2 different neighborhood meetings, and actually 3 at this point. The Planning Commission then holds a public hearing, makes a recommendation to the council on the general plan, and then the council has a public meeting and makes the final decision. This is just to show you a brief timeline of kind of the history of this project. Just, again, I know you guys have seen this project several times, but this is the first time it's actually been on a public meeting agenda. So just want the public to understand that there has been several meetings with the Planning Commission and City Council over the past few months that we've been working on this. The applicant has submitted 3 different applications. Again, the first application is for the general plan. The second application is to rezone a portion of the property from A1 to R210, and we'll get to that one in a minute. And then the third application is to rezone the entire property with the planned development overlay zone. The first application, which is the item 4.3 that we're on right now, is the general plan. The current general plan shows the property as, and again, we're just talking about the northern 75 acres, it's approximately 75 acres. It's currently low-density residential and commercial. The proposal from the applicant is to change that property to medium-density residential on the general plan. The rezone application is to change the zoning on that same piece of property, which is currently A1, to R210, which is a medium-density residential zoning. And then again, the third application is the planned development overlay zone on the entire property, which is about 105 acres, and then includes that southern about 30 acres. When making a decision on a general plan amendment, the City Council needs to look at the standards in the ordinance, and the ordinance talks about if the action will promote the public interest, conserve property values, and encourage the appropriate use and development, and promote the general welfare. So these are the kind of things that the council will be looking at when they're making their decision. And again, so what you're making, this first item is for an amendment to the general plan. Again, just on the northern 75 acres. So I would suggest probably we do the public hearing on this one, or I can go through all of them and we do, I guess we have to have 3 separate public
Yeah,
hearings.
let's
So
do-
we
let's
want to just
separate.
do the public hearing on the general plan right now, then we can move on to the other ones.
All right, thank you so much, Bryn. And if the applicant's here, would like to share any, I guess is the city the applicant? Nope, Academy.
No, the applicant is the applicant,
Yeah,
not the city.
yeah, so if the applicant would like to share anything else, if there's any additional information on this part of it.
Just on the general plan, yeah.
Steve Maddox, Edge Homes. We are here for 4.3, 4.4, 4.5. I would like direction from Planning Commission as to when we should talk about the project itself.
I think do it now,
Yeah.
because everybody else is going to be confused as well. There's no which ones, I'm guessing, there's a lot of you here to speak. So I would prefer to have you present
I think that would give
what's
insight.
going on, and then people can now then come up and comment, and my guess is they probably won't comment in all three, but that's my
Even though we'll
opinion.
have to open 3 separate.
Yeah.
public
We'll open
hearings,
it three
just do
separate times, but you
I
feel
think
free
it'll
to
give
comment
insight
when you want.
into why this is a part of the process based off of what you're proposing.
Okay, so I will address everything in grave detail.
Sounds good.
Okay, thank you. We have a slide presentation that I would like to present to go through the details as to why the requests this evening. As indicated from staff, we've been working on this for a period of about 9 months. SLR, who is the current owner of the property, has been working on it for probably closer to 8 years. When we began to look at what some of our objectives were, we met with staff, we met with Planning Commission, we met with City Council. One of the major concerns for the community as a whole, both in Riverton and Herriman, is Sentinel Boulevard, which seems to have turned into a bit of a speed trap and certainly traffic. So we began to work from that perimeter and viewpoint and work its way out, and we immediately realized that we had kind of opened up a can of worms where this project was one that sat in the middle of about 3 different developments that were affected by every decision we made. Mountain View Village, which is in the city of Riverton, has a master development agreement that is in place on everything that will be north of the dividing line, which is 138th. They have zoning approved for up to somewhere in the range of 3,600 to 4,100 units available for portions of this. Part of it is on the north side of 134th, part of that is on the south side of 134th. The Rosecrest overlay, as staff indicated, encompasses a portion of the property which has zoning currently, and I believe that that is somewhere in the 5 units to the acre. And then we realize that there is a concern from residents that are significantly further west in the Creek Ridge development, which currently have an MDA that we'll address later that has, I believe, somewhere around 2,900 residents that are, or 2,900 units that are currently vested and entitled in that area, also owned by SLR. SLR is a for-profit entity of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. The subject property was a farm that facilitated alfalfa for the feeding of cows. That certainly has been divided and now is the appropriate time, and that's why SLR went to market. So if we could go to the next slide. This is the overall zoning that Bryn had indicated. Years ago, the city of Herriman approached SLR for the right-of-way for Mountain View Corridor. It is my understanding that Mayor Crane was able to negotiate the donation of 30 acres to the city, of which Mountain View Corridor now resides on, and part of that was also Wasatch, and part of that was Rosecrest and their group. Next, please. This is the 2008 general plan that existed at the time that these MDAs were signed in Rosecrest. Since then, we have had some sale of property and obviously a road that now flanks the middle of the project. Next. So about 9 months ago, we had presented to the public in neighborhood meeting. We had presented to Planning Commission in a discovery meeting, not for a vote, one of our proposals. And the densities in the bottom left-hand corner is what we had proposed with single-family 244 units, townhomes 193, and condominiums of 310 for a total of 747 units. As you can see from this exhibit along the Mountain View corridor, currently Jordan School District owns approximately 24 acres, and we had proposed a density blend. We had a meeting house across the street from the elementary school. The seminary building is currently built, and the park of 9.6 acres were items that we had suggested and began talking, and we met with the neighborhood, and it was a fairly spirited meeting. I believe we went about 2.5 hours, and we went back to the drawing board. Next. One of the, and two of the, and three of the items that we came back with is that there is a concern from some that there should be a commercial element here. There was a concern that the density that was stacked on the western portion of Sentinel Ridge Boulevard became a little bit consolidated. I made a representation that I want to quantify. We have not received any approvals from the school district to shift a property line. We have not negotiated with the board in any way, fashion, that this is indeed something that the school district would agree to, which is a property line shift. We would like to propose to them after we visit tonight that there would be a modest shift on where that school property would be located, and we would procure a 5.5 or so parcel of commercial property on the Mountain View corridor and the proposed 138th. There would be an additional road and connectivity to Mountain View corridor adjacent to the high school. There are a lot of logistics that we would need to work out, and ultimately would need to get the board approval of the school district. One of the items that we felt like we needed to consider was the connectivity through Herriman, through Riverton. And as you can see on the eastern property line, we have secured a trail corridor that would lead all of Rosecrest communities to the regional park of the 9.6 acres. We have an additional neighborhood park that we have proposed, which would be essentially a private amenity of clubhouse, swimming pools that would be for the users of this area. We have been asked by individuals that live within the area that that pool and clubhouse become an amenity that they would be able to subscribe to, and we have agreed to do so. Once again, the density is 750 units with a unit count that increased on the condominium to be able to push those uses from the commercial pad down to the residential portion. Next slide, please. On Monday of this week, we sat down with a representative of SLR. One of the requests from council members is that we would consider the density. And it was at that time that we began looking at what would be the best visual driving to and through the community and the livability. We took all of our condominium units in the city of Herriman and we reduced that to 0 on the condominium. So no 3-story condominium buildings. There was the feeling in the neighborhood that the height and the potential use of condominiums was not conducive with the neighborhood. We kept everything congruent to what we had presented and felt like we had worked out with the neighborhood. We moved the LDS church house to the east side of the elementary school. We believe that on evenings where events are happening in the elementary school, there is an abundance of traffic and it became dangerous. We feel like the overflow will be handled much better here, just on the linear curb space alone without any residents. That change was made. And then we reduced our unit count from 750 to 600 total units and provided a commercial corner. One of the items that I want to point out is that the streetscape and the landscaping and the slip roads that we have talked about in the past are all intact, and we have not reduced the amenity package that we have presented both to Planning Commission, City Council, and the neighborhood from our first plan to this plan. Next, please. The slip road came up to our preview with the site plan approval of the new LDS temple that was announced in Saratoga. And essentially what it is a road outside of a road. It's a calming structure that allows it to feel more like a village rather than a streetscape like many of the corridors are throughout the cities in Utah, which is a curb, a 5-foot strip that becomes a little bit of an eyesore because it's not maintained, and then you've got a stark concrete wall, and then you have the backs of homes. And we battled with this, whether we should just do a 20-foot strip, whether we did some landscaping, is there anything that we could do to calm because of the expense that this would create, and we felt as if the right item for this was to be able to have this in perpetuity and have the greenscape. This is a very straight road. This is a very fast-traveled road at the time, and we feel like having front yards appurtenant to will be a calm for good in the long run. Next, please. This will be a private slip lane maintained by the homeowners. Parking certainly will be utilized in front of their homes, but these will all be detached, single-family homes in some of these slip roads, and then but the front of units will face every major road that we have within the project. Next. I don't know whether this is a big fish story or whether there is going to be the opportunity for public transportation or light rail. We have been asked to plan around it. These are for cartoon purposes only as to what this cross-section would look like in the future. We have no inside track with UDOT as to whether the state plans on having funding to be able to do this, but what we wanted to do was to provide a neighborhood with the solace that this would not be shoved to one side or the other and homes torn down after a couple of years of occupancy and people having to live close to the light rail. The next slide is a rendition that LOSI had rendered for us, which is more of a greenscape. I'm not sure who would mow the lawn there. We're hoping that somebody on staff here does when the train's not running. Next, please. I'm not sure exactly how to begin this conversation, so I will just begin. We have been asked by Riverton City for a period of about 9 months to present a proposal in Riverton. We have not done that to this date. We have met with staff. We have met with the mayor. I have met with SLR and asked if we could cap density as part of our master development agreement. Staff at Riverton City feels that it would be important to explore the ability to double density within this location. They feel as if the amount of property that is here would be a great location to be able to have additional densities. When we had originally began to negotiate with SLR, the desire from Steve Romney, the president of SLR, was to make sure that we had congruity between communities. So the densities that I have presented tonight in Herriman are the same densities that we would be capped at in the city of Riverton. It's a unique experience for a planning commission and ultimately city council within a city to be able to regulate densities and amenities within a different city. As you can see, we have kept the slip roads, we have kept the single family element, and we have kept density at where we are proposing tonight within the city of Herriman. One of the items that came out in one of our work sessions is a consolidated green space. And so the blank space that you see to the very right of your screen is that 10-acre park that would be developed and more codified with what we have on the Herriman portion, so that we have a total of 20 acres there for the use of the citizens. The portion that exists along 134th that you see here on the other side of the waterway currently has a commercial overlay on it and a high-density overlay on it. We are not party to that property, and we don't know what will ultimately be there. The butterfly that you see at the intersection there is because the access point to the commercial does not allow an ingress immediately off of that access because of queuing at the light there. So that is the commercial element that sits there, and the product type, like I mentioned, will be very similar. There are 2 LDS church sites here, one on the Herriman portion. We have been asked to make sure that we have seamless transition between communities. We feel as if we have done that, but once again, we have not provided anything to Planning Commission, but an MDA does exist with that density somewhere between 3,600 and 4,100 units, of which we do not have a cap on what we do here. without Planning Commission and City Council's direction. Next slide. One of the items that was brought to our attention is that a lot of the basins that exist within the Rosecrest community, we believe there's between 50 and 60 acres, are currently without outfall. And the water that is collected there percolates at times and doesn't percolate at other times, so those have become areas that are a little bit blighted. The outfall that has been given to us is that that water would need to go through our project, including the Riverton portion. The blue would denote the Riverton location outfall. This is not a minor storm drain line. I would consider this to be one of the biggest projects in the state. It's a 60-inch culvert buried and would handle all of the necessity of stormwater that exists in the greater area that we're talking about. So this storm drain line is not for our project necessarily. This is to take care of all of the stormwater that exists. As part of our consideration going through the city of Riverton, we would maintain as an HOA all of the green space that is above this and the trail connectivity and everything associated with that. And the city of Herriman would be responsible to make sure that the outboxes and the outflow of water would be maintained. This would allow all of the basins that exist currently that have no outfall to be able to have a storm drain remediation plan. This would be built in phases, but the immediate need and concern of flooding would be immediately eliminated. As many of you know, Sentinel was built, the schools were built without storm drain outfall, and all of this would be remedied as part of what we are proposing in our project this evening. Next, please. This is a commercial centers report that the city of Herriman has prepared. There's a total of approximately 520 acres that exist today. We would hope that the commercial corner that we have proposed would be considered, but it's certainly not mandatory and would require the agreement of the board, the school board, to be able to ratify any adjustments to their current property, which restricts our ability to do the corner there. Next item, please, or next slide. This would be an artist rendering of what that corner could potentially look like. The oversight on our part is that this was drawn when we had condominiums proposed, so this would be replaced with two-story product. To give you folks an idea, this is a 5.25 acre parcel. Podium that exists in Traverse Mountain currently has approximately 625 employees on 5.25 acres, of which they park appropriately. So this would give the opportunity, potential opportunity in the future to have some commercial job use and create and stimulate additional influx, hopefully, of those that could support the Wasatch development going to the south of this property in retail, restaurants, and hotels. Next. One of the proposals that was made and proffered by SLR is that the Creek Ridge project, excuse me, I think I gave the wrong number of units approved, 2,137 units to be exact on what's approved at Creek Ridge West would be surrendered, and the MDA would be modified and would be reduced by that amount of units. The net effect of removing 270 units from that location based on the state's averages of trip counts would reduce the trips on 118th and 126th by approximately 1,100 units or 1,100 trips daily, respectively, on each one of those roads. That would be a modification that City Council would look at and will be proposed next week as part of the regular agenda as to what this would be. This is not a altercation of product. This is not a we're changing usage of ground. This is a hard number of units that would be reduced from the 2,137 units in Creek Ridge. Next item. The next item that I want to be crystal clear on is that part of this agreement and part of the MDA that your legal counsel will be drafting with us would be a permanent cap on the Mountain View Village or the Riverton portion of those units to the 7.5 units to the acre and would be congruent with everything else that we have proposed. Next item. This is what the consolidated park would look like. It would be, according to both park directors in both cities, this would be programmable space. This would be for organized sports. This would not be tot lot ridden. This would not be tennis. This would not be pickleball. This would be programmable park space. Our obligation would be to build the park, bathrooms, and the two parks directors would be able to facilitate what goes on there. These would be public parks, not private parks, maintained proportionate to the Riverton Park and the Herriman Park, but connectivity to and through the community to allow connectivity with both Riverton and Herriman residents. Next slide, please. There was a post this evening that was a consolidation that I would like to read briefly. And this was an encapsulation from an individual. And this is his recap of what is happening. An elimination of all 3-story condos in favor of 2-story townhomes. Reduction of total units in this development from 750 to 600. Elimination of 270 units in the Creek Ridge development. These will not be transferred into the Mountain Ridge development, but eliminated entirely. In a writing agreement to limit density on the Riverton portion to create a more uniform feel for the entire project. Proposal to negotiate a land swap with Jordan School District to reorient the current land and open a 5.2 acre parcel of commercial land along the Mountain View corridor. Additional benefits would be a 10-acre programmable park, creation of stormwater outfall, which arguably could save the city somewhere between 2.5 and 5 million in cost, depending upon options, and draining of current detention ponds in the area, and opening up approximately 40 acres. This is a guesstimate of green space. That is a consolidation of what we are proposing. The net effect of every time we moved and twisted, and I think I've become the most disfavorable individual that's coming into the office right now, because every time I've come in, I have said I want to modify this and I want to modify this, because every time we made a decision to move something, it counterbalanced something else. And so we have been dealing with 2 municipalities, the school district, the SLR component of this, and ultimately the connectivity between communities. Thank you.
Thank you. If you don't mind staying up just for one more minute, because I do want the Planning Commission to have a chance to ask a couple questions before I open the public hearing. And maybe just the first one I'll start with, and then I'll turn to the Planning Commission if they have any additionals. So the proposed commercial, just to be clear, right now is in the Jordan School District owns that property, and you're proposing a switch from the property with where the curve is to maybe go there if that's something that they're interested in or willing to do, correct?
Correct.
And then right now, with the talks that we've had within the city, somewhere in the MDA, it would talk about a timetable on that commercial, meaning whether it's 5 years or 7 years or a different timetable, that if commercial does not come into that, it would divert back to the possibility of building residential.
Yes.
And then
And the reason for that is that the concern that we have is that commercial application is a broad C2 zone that allows something that I would struggle if it detracted from the integrity of the millions of dollars worth of amenities that we've put in there. So the residential component would be something that we believe we could control and maintain the integrity of the dollars and what we have represented to the individuals that live within the community. I would prefer if your community developer, future community developer, anybody in the room has an application that's orthodox or unorthodox, to begin, and let's come up with something that's a creative use for commercial. I'm not just saying a commercial retail, or I'm open to anything.
Okay, and then just the last question from me. And right now, and granted, the MDA is not written, so, but at least on this, it's proposed to put another additional 100 units in that area, at least on this.
If in fact it doesn't sell, is that correct?
Correct.
Yes, so we would have a net, if the commercial did not sell, we would have a net of 700 units, not the 750. So there would be an overall reduction of 50 units if in fact the commercial pad was not able to be utilized for commercial.
Okay, thank you, and if there's any other questions
So
from the
what
planning
would the
commission.
100 units be?
I'm
Would it be-
sorry?
What would those 100 units be? Would they be condos?
I don't even want to think about it because
I
I'd
don't
be
either.
shadow boxing. I'm hoping I don't have to.
But to fit 100 units on the 5.5 acres.
It'd have to be.
It'd have to be pretty.
Our condominium product is about 18 units to the acre. I think it would be challenging to fit 20 units to the acre with setbacks and everything else. It's a number that we have in there as a placeholder. Our desire is to help induce the sale of the commercial corner.
We all agree. But if that doesn't happen, I don't want 100 units there.
Yeah. So, but any other questions for the applicant real quick before I open the public hearing?
I have a question. On the Riverton side where you have the 10-acre park, is there going to be any drainage used in
No.
that park? Okay.
And the other item that I can laugh with Planning Commission right now is we would be asking for some type of a speed berm or hump that would allow traffic connectivity. So that would be part of our motion at some point in the future to be able to have a pedestrian-friendly connectivity. We have major infrastructure in those roads that is there. We can't go under. We've got to go over. So whatever that scat pack looks like or whatever we can do with this body. That road is a hybrid, half Riverton, half Herriman. We have also asked for the same consideration in what that looks like.
Will there be parking?
Excellent question. If you notice the way that we have laid this out, we have one-sided roads only. So everything along the curb will allow for parking, which most parks have because it's significantly cheaper, houses that are surrounding. Within this park, if there is a need or a desire from the Parks Department, then we will address that. At this point right now, we feel as if there's sufficient parking. If we need to do some micro, then we will do that. The challenge is with programmable park space, it's utilized on Saturday and then it's asphalt the majority of the time and it takes away from the green space. So we hope that we've got enough linear along there that we will be able to handle that. I don't have the metrics on what parking lots look like. If that needs to be included, we would do so.
Thank you so much.
I have a question.
Oh, hold on.
So I know you talked about trying to be congruent with Riverton and Herriman. So we have kind of, I guess, let's see what would be east of where a commercial might be. There's single-family homes.
North?
On the Herriman side.
Okay.
Then on the Riverton side, are those townhomes and condos?
I have not fully designed that. So I don't have in there, we have thrown around about 75 different renditions, not knowing what will be approved or not approved on the Herriman portion, but we would want to mirror to make sure that as you drive into the community, that there's cohesion.
Yeah. And then that same little pod, so we have, I guess, detached, and then on the other section, townhomes that, is it the, I guess, rear parking, right? And
Those
the
are
front's
alley load, that's correct.
Alley load?
Yep.
Okay.
About how many acres is where the mouse just was? That little pod right there? Do you know?
9 acres, I believe.
Thank you. That's all I had.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And just a reminder to the public, we will give 2 minutes to an individual. Please be respectful of that. And then if there is a group, you will be given an extra, it'll be up to 5 minutes if you're representing a group. And I will open the public hearing at this time, and when you come up, just state your name.
I was gonna say, don't all rush at once. A lot of people for nobody.
My name's Lauren Smith, and I'm particularly interested in this property because it's my backyard, literally. When we purchased our property, we were concerned about what was going in there. We looked into the planning, and we bought there for specific purposes, thinking that there would be some lower density behind us. I will say that I was vehemently opposed to the first rendition of this project, mainly because there was those 3-story condos, and it just seemed like it was a continuation of what I think is a disaster from Rosecrest north to Porter Rockwell. So what I do appreciate now is that they have taken, that Edge has taken and reduced significantly the density, also the height. I am concerned about a few things, but mainly about traffic and the traffic flow, as well as parking. If you look around the Shadow Run area, you'll see how they're just parked all over the streets, even during snow and those things. And I am concerned about that. Even with the slip roads, I'm afraid that they will be filled with parking. Particularly on one side, on Sentinel, you'll see that those are townhomes, and I'm afraid that the benefit of those slip roads might be reduced if people are going to load that up with parked cars. Those are my concerns. Overall, I would say I'm happier. I'm also happier with lower density. I'm also happier with higher commercial. I think that I'm hoping we're getting to a sweet spot. But the last thing I'm most concerned about, last time that there was a working meeting between the council and the planning commission, is the proposal that they had was starting to be manipulated by this body and moving that commercial. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Chris, let's just point out again that we're going to have 3 public hearings.
We will.
Even though it's really the same, but, so you've opened it for the general plan, basically, at this point.
Correct.
Yeah.
Hi, my name's Betsy Biven, and I don't live near this. I live out towards the Cove. I think my concern is more general. My background is in environmental studies and geography and city planning. And one thing, the main thing that came to my attention today was, per your website, the city ordinances require that all rezones match the intent of the general plan. Going from A1 to this doesn't, in my mind, match the plan. My concerns are that there isn't enough infrastructure in the city to support the number of subdivisions that are going in. We're seeing impacts with fire, police, snowplows, safety. This is starting to look like San Jose did in 1970, where a lot of homes went in and there was no infrastructure. And later, the infrastructure went in. People lost land to eminent domain, and it was a disaster. I appreciate what you guys do, but I think you all could do a better job for us. I hear a lot of complaining. I hear a lot of people saying, too much growth, not enough planning. I think this is an example of that. I think what I would really love to see is a moratorium on any changes to the general plan, more interaction with the community, putting a 55-plus housing area next to a school didn't cue me as being exceedingly great.
Just a reminder, your time has come up, so please wrap it up.
Okay. Anyway, I'd like to see you guys do nothing because I would hate to take it to the next level or see the community take it to the next level like the state. But thank you for your time. Good luck.
Thank you so much.
Sherry Orn.
I apologize for taking your time because I'll obviously have an opportunity to have a lot to say. And heaven knows we had a lot to say when it was our planned time together a few weeks ago. The comments I just want to reserve today is just about the general plan. A general plan is supposed to be a comprehensive long-range plan for present and future needs of a municipality. Not short range, not what do we need now, but what in the long term is best interest of this community. It's supposed to be a compass for the community. So we have spent over $250,000 in the last 3 years on just consultants working on the general plan. One was referendum, so we had to start all over again. We spent a year and a half currently with the current company that's doing this to make sure we get this right. So there was a decision made by the council, of which I sat on in April of 2018, that changed that corner that we've been discussing to commercial. Now, I can tell you that that decision was made after $100,000 plus in economic development studies and things like that, because we felt like it was so critical to preserve that commercial. We couldn't wait for the whole year and a half to play out. We had to preserve it now, because our job is to make sure that this community is fiscally viable and that it continues to be a great place to live and raise a family, that our taxes don't overwhelm us. We have about $800,000 in property taxes right now in our budget. We have about $9 million in one-time money. So as a community, as decision makers, we have to figure out how to replace that money. We're only 50% built out, guys. That gap is going to continue to increase. So to see a pretty picture of different commercial things up here, we have to understand that there's a lot more coming. And so it's just, to me, I don't think we can walk away from commercial property that has potential access to the Mountain View corridor. You know, we've talked about working.
Just to let you know your time is.
So yeah, I'm going to sit down right now. I could say I represent about a few thousand people and ask for the full 5 minutes.
I'll give you another 3 minutes.
But I'll be respectful of your time too. But you guys know my passion for it. I understand the density. I understand, and I thank these guys for trying to create a great development. But our job is to really pan out and not focus in on that development, but what is best for the whole city. Thanks.
Thank you so much.
I'm Janine Carpenter, 6848 West Long Ridge Drive. I don't live anywhere near this development, but I'm just going to echo a lot of what Sherry had said. But back in the day, I paid very close attention to the general plan, and it is a compass. This development, it's one-time money. I didn't like my tax statement this year. That's one-time money. That commercial development, that is viable property that every year, and I want my taxes to go low and low and low. 13400 South is a nightmare right now, and you're wanting to build right on it. Absolute nightmare. I don't shop the only place I shop here in Herriman is Smith's and the gas station. All of my money is spent in South Jordan and Riverton. And that I would like to have my money spent here. And that's so we need to take a look and just take care of the residents. And I know all of you guys are residents here. And have you ever thought as an individual, how is this affecting you? How is this affecting your lifestyle? You know, I don't know where any of you live, but you need to ask yourself that. And you can tell a developer, no, this is not the place. This is not the place for residential. We have reserved this spot for commercial. Because if you take that commercial away, where else are we going to take it? You know, we're tucked back here in a corner. We're tucked back here in a corner. And so that Mountain View corridor, it is vital that we maintain it as commercial development. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to ask the audience just to hold your enthusiastic applause. I'm glad you guys agree with some of the other citizens, but I don't want our developers and other citizens with comments to feel bad.
Thank you. I just wanted to remind, that is part of the rules of procedure here in the Planning Commission meeting, that there won't be any applause or public outbursts in response to public comment, so I appreciate that.
Good evening. My name is Weston Barney with 5074 Sienna Rose Drive. I live up in the Rosecrest development. I've been here about 10 years. And as we all know, Herriman is a bedroom community that's trying to transition into a full-service community. Destroying the commercial areas is only going to harm that. Everyone travels out because there's nowhere to work here. You get rid of this commercial land and you're bringing in more people that have to travel into the main Salt Lake City area. With the prison moving, you're going to see commerce there, and where do you think they're going to live? Here and commute out. That brings me to my main concern, which is 134th. According to the math that was just given, by saving the 270 units up high, I don't even know the name of it, it will free up 1,100 trips, is what he said. You add the amount of units that you're going to put in here, it's about 2,000. So if you times that by the same ratio, that's 8,000 trips or cars that will be added to that 134th to try to get to Draper, to try to get to downtown, to try to get to Riverton, to try to get wherever. That road is already at capacity, as we all know and the studies have shown. So if we add another 8,000 cars only on the south end of that, let alone what's going to go in on the north as soon as that mall and development and movie theater is done, it is a problem. So this needs to be kept as commercial. There's just too many people. We want to be welcoming as a community. Another question I had, do all these units have two-car garages? Do they have any garages? These cars are going to be parked on the street. So we need to mandate that they can park in their garage, and that's an ordinance. It's just too much for those of us that have lived here for a while. We've put up with the traffic thus far, and to see it getting 10 times worse is nothing that I would want to stay for sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Courtney Poole. I live just south of this development as well. And I am with Lauren that I think we're taking steps in the right direction here. And I'm pleased with the efforts that every party has put in. I think every party has compromised, but every party benefits. The commercial, for sure, is not as big as I know some people want, but it's there. The overall density has decreased. The density in the other area has decreased. And I agree with the traffic issues, but to me, there's going to be tons of units in the Riverton portion. That's going to make 134 a nightmare, more than it is already. So this, to me, is a way to somewhat control the density in both of the areas. And I'm afraid if we don't work with this plan and have this continuity, we'll end up with just little random chunks of development that might not be better. We might even end up with more density that way, and just definitely a less cohesive and less like visually appealing community for us. So I think that we should consider moving forward with it. There's definitely steps that could be taken citywide to improve the infrastructure. I don't necessarily know that that is directly related to this development, but that's definitely a concern that most of the residents would agree with. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Carly Powers, and thank you guys for all of your comments. I'm relatively new to the community here. Recently just purchased a property down the street from this development. I'm concerned about my development and the property values, but I'm more concerned about the infrastructure that's been spoken about. There aren't any jobs. I could piggyback off of everything that everybody has said here. Traffic issues. I don't think that adding the commercial aspect to this land would increase to the issue on that street, just because you're bringing people and residents that are already located in Herriman. They're gonna have to be driving elsewhere to bring their business, and that adds to the traffic. There's gonna be traffic either way. You're adding essential infrastructure that we really need, jobs, taxes that come in from purchases. And so I think it's really important that that remains commercial, or that we look at alternatives. Because I think that we're looking at a very narrow site here, that it's one side has to win here, and I think that there can be more of a collaborative effort. I think that I now understand as a new member of the community why you would want to have this residential zone come in, because they are offering this drainage solution that we haven't had before, and I think that is a great selling point on their part. So good job on that. But I think that there are alternatives, and there would be alternative people that would be willing to step up to the plate and offer that same solution under maybe commercial properties or a less high density unit. And I know that we've decreased the high density, however, it still seems pretty compact in there. Having some already high density properties within that area, it's not appealing. It's already kind of looking a little overpopulated, and we just don't need more of that. So, thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, at this time, we will close the public. Oh, I saw someone start to stand.
Hi, I'm Katrina Jolly, and I live in the homes that are just south of the high school. We can't even get out of our development. We are landlocked because of the high school kids. First it was we had one road out. Now we have Sentinel Boulevard, which is great. That's awesome. We love it. There's too much traffic. There are 10 to 11 different apartments, condos, townhomes, different ones that are each connected. Maybe there's two of this person or whatever, but they're all there. And it's insane for a road that's that short of a distance to have that much density. They are adding more density, and I will applaud Steve for trying his very best to get what he needs and what we need out of it. My problem is I wish the numbers were flopped, and he knows that. I said that last night at the meeting. I've been to all of the meetings with them. The bigger problem is green space. So he's giving us green space, which is great, but that means nothing to me when there's so much traffic, I can't even make it to there. I can't get out. We need a light at our section or something to even get out. There's no way in and out. The other things that are problems that we have is, yes, there's gonna be commercial there, a little bit here or whatever. We need more money in commercial. We all know that because our taxes are just going up every year, as everybody else has said. The parking, I'm worried about. We do have a park that's close by, and it's a joke. The park is, kids can't play on the green space. There is other stuff, but there's a parking lot, but even parking in the Shadow Run is insane. Like, they park on the roads, and that's also edge homes that they can't get out. So that's my worry. Yes, they're gonna have back parking, but what happens to all the other people? What happens around this park? And if you're going to give them a drainage thing and they're gonna put it in, that money should be spent on that park, is what I feel. Because that park, we have nothing as our other park. We have no other green spaces. You gave another green space, I saw my time, another green space that you guys gave away to the community college. And there's no plan for that to happen currently, right? So that's one other space that there's nothing for those kids to play in. Thank you.
Thank you. I will close the public hearing for this item. There will be two more. And turn to the Planning Commission at this time.
So can we go to this map? I don't know, it's in our packet, but I don't know how to say. Can you go to that map right there? Some look of that map.
No. That?
Yeah, the one on the left.
Okay.
So I just want to talk to the Planning Commission about this a little bit. So if we look at the yellow space that is just outside of this, that is currently in Rosecrest's master plan, it is currently zoned and it has a development agreement for 5 units per acre, right there. So pretty much no matter what, there could be 150 units going on just that piece if we don't do anything. There's nothing we can do. The commercial, I love commercial. I really want to go on record on that saying I love commercial. However, half of this red chunk is owned by the school district for a school, and they do not have to have a requirement to put on, a school can go anywhere. So even if we zoned it 100% commercial, it could be a school. So I just want to highlight that we're really talking about that small area of red, not as big of red. So that's what I'm also going to say. Then if you go over to where it's low density, the density units, as per our current general plan, would allow 123 units right there. So if you were to add the 123 plus the 150, you are at, what is that, 273, which means what the developer is proposing of a 600 units is that there's only 327 units. Going on the way I look at it, spread across all of that. We are reducing the city's demand by 270 by doing that in another place. We're getting a gigantic park. The commercial area, I've sat on this board over 5.5 years now. When we made the recommendation to council to make this not commercial, the reason why we did that is because of the way the Mountain View is configured. We talked about this in the pre-work meeting, but there will be no way to get to this spot without very unique driving ability to get there. I know anybody that was there will be able to understand, but in order to get off at 134th, about where that mouse just was, is the only spot to get off of the freeway to the current frontage roads, which is we are seeing. The general plan is a guide, and I completely agree with that, and that's why I made the recommendation to not have this be commercial at that time, is because it doesn't flow here. I understand there's other uses for commercial, which is why I think the current proposal makes sense. I can't see much more than that. To be honest, I have kind of, now if we can go to Steve's drawing, while we were talking, I actually think so much that commercial won't be viable, that what I was wondering is if we could combine that commercial and that one pod right next to it.
And this is the old plan, but it's still.
Yeah, close enough for discussion. I'm not talking about units for everybody's awareness, but the commercial and that pod, tie those together so that if it doesn't go commercial, it's not 100 units on one 5-acre piece. Again, I think I believe it will go residential. So that's why I'm saying tie those two together and don't go much higher than maybe 8 to 10 units per acre instead of 100 units on one 5-acre piece, which is 20 units per acre. So I like the 600 that we've been talking about total on the number. I think it makes sense for what we are gaining out of all of this. Again, the only reason I would tie more commercial is just so that end solution could make sense if it doesn't go commercial.
Thank you, Adam.
Chris, do you want to have the other 2 public hearings first?
Yes. Since it's going to blend over into everything.
Yeah, before you kind of, whatever you're going to do.
We could just continue this item. Is that what we would do?
Well,
I don't think we have to have a vote.
we wouldn't continue, we would just go on.
Come back for a decision.
After public hearings, yeah, and then go back and then
Just come back.
deliberate.
I'm okay with that if the planning commission is, so we can
completely
talk about it.
fine.
But I do want to address, there's definitely more to it because there's differing views on even what Adam was talking about within the planning commission that I think needs to be expressed.
Yeah, please don't take what my one statement is what everyone else feels, so.
And so we can't move on, and that'll also turn to city staff on 4.4 for the rezone, and then we'll turn to the applicant again for additional information.
Open them up.
So I'll just go over that again really quickly. So item 4.4 is a rezone, again, just on the northern piece where it's currently A1. The rezone is proposed to go from A1 to R210, which allows up to 8 units per acre. And again, so that's essentially the rezone. If you want to have that public hearing just on the rezone, I guess.
Okay, I am going to give Steve another minute since he is the applicant on this, though.
Steve Maddox, Edge Homes. Couple points of clarification. We have planned this and moved LDS church houses into zones that are probably the highest density as it's currently zoned. The commercial component that has been discussed this evening also allows for the construction of school sites and the construction of church houses. So the property that is currently owned along the Mountain View corridor is owned by the school district. SLR has not agreed to a trade. The school district has not agreed to a trade. So everything that we're talking about, as the commissioner indicated, is really internal of that. So that has been considered to do a double chapel site in that area and consolidate a parking lot. Commercial is something that Edge Homes has tried to hang on to on the corner. It is not a consideration that SLR necessarily wants to do. Their feeling from the beginning is that this was something that was going to be residential and have designed around that. So when I speak about commercial, that is exclusively Stephen Edge Homes, and not an SLR agreement or school district at this point. Thank you.
Thank you. I will open the public hearing at this time. It is an additional item, so if you want to come up for additional 2 minutes, and also just to state that we do need you to fill out the comment form and present it to Wendy before the end of the meeting. If you did come up and speak, please.
Hi again, Betsy Biven. Again, I thank you all very much for your public service. Coming from California, 5 years ago, moving here, small town feel, love it. Sadly, it's changed. The rural feel of Herriman to me has changed for the, as I see in the mission statement and such. I'm not feeling the Herriman feel. And a lot of that is with all the growth that's occurring. My biggest concerns right now are safety, fire, police, and then schools. Coming from California, I lost a house to fire. I know what it's like to be trapped in a burning building and not being able to get out. I also know my friends in Paradise who could not get out of their town and who lost friends and family members. What I see in Herriman is also wildland-urban interface. And as we increase the population in Herriman, we don't seem to be increasing the egress and ingress. That's a big problem where I live. And even this, though it isn't in that urban wildland interface, it does affect those beyond. So should something happen, should there be another Herriman fire, as there was 2011? I worry for people who live up there. I worry for people who, if we have this mass growth, we don't have the police in 4 minutes. It may take 6. We don't have the snow plows. And if my husband has a heart attack while he's out there shoveling the snow, the time for EMTs to get there is going to be extended. Anyhow, that's enough of my babbling for these 2 minutes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Jonathan Harris, for the record. This is my first time at a planning commission meeting, so forgive my ignorance. First time to rodeo. I was thinking a lot about one of the residents said, and I would like to hear, if this is the appropriate question for the council, what do you do about the proposed 8,000 cars in that area as a local resident? That is significant, and with only 2 lights currently, it's just going to be unmanageable during rush hour for commuting hours. So I would like to hear conversations about that. I think the development's beautiful, but there are realities that I feel like the residents maybe aren't getting addressed. Sometimes it is the feel, and some of the residents have said that the feel isn't right. I respect that. But the core nuts and bolts logistics are what are bothering me. The number of cars, and then where does that commercial go? how do we realign that, and how does that work out? I won't take the rest of my minute, so I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Hi, I'm Jackson Ferguson, 4968 Laurelwood Lane, here in Herriman. Say hi to, I'm also a planning commissioner, however, I came here directly from a flight in from out of town, so I couldn't make it on the board tonight, my apologies. So I'll be real brief and say that if I did have the chance to vote on this item, I would reflect what Sherry has stated, that we need to do everything we can to keep commercial space. Thank you.
My name is Greg Hunt. Though I see lots of improvements over the plans that Edge Homes has created, I do think we need to slow it down and continue to have this type of a discussion, get the full effect of all angles from it that are involved. I feel that it's rushed. I like the new plan the best, obviously. We're getting there. But I still feel that it's rushed. I feel like so many things need to be looked at that have already been discussed with all the other residents. The infrastructure, you know, the safety concerns, the commercial. There's a lot to this. It's not just throwing, I know that it's been on the plate for several months. I still feel like it needs to be fine-tuned, and we're not there yet. Thank you.
Thank you.
Nate Levitt. I have 4 boys, and I plan on raising them here. That's the plan right now, is to stay here and raise them in Herriman. It's tough to see the pace that things have gone. I was ignorant to it for the first year or two. I've been here about 4 years now, and was just kind of focused on my life and realized all these buildings going up around me. And so I guess my concern is, as I look forward, I can't imagine what it's going to look like in 10 years infrastructure-wise. It, as has been mentioned many times, it's already so taxed. And so I do, to their credit, I feel like they've put a ton of effort and done a really great job, because they have a job to do with what they've been given and what they've been handed. It's a complicated problem to solve. And it's even more challenging that this discussion is partly out of our control, because more than half of it's in Riverton, and we don't have control over that. And it's insane what's going on that block. And so I appreciate the improvements on the Herriman side. The Riverton side scares me, and we have to share that road. 134th is a road for Herriman people, Riverton people, and I think the bottom line for me is I literally just can't imagine what it is going to look like in 10 years when I'm still here with my kids, hopefully, and how we get out of here. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Name's Jennifer Jessup. I've been sitting listening to everyone's feedback. As a local realtor, I'm absolutely an advocate of home ownership. What scares me the most is the fact that our economy in general is changing, and first-time home buyers are going to struggle to get a home, period. And so I understand condos and townhomes are probably going to be their best option out the gate. But what I worry about is I've been a resident of this community for over 10 years, never thought I'd move, but I don't see myself staying here for another 20 or 30 years at the rate our growth is happening. I commute outside of Herriman every single day, like many folks here. My commute has doubled. My time has doubled. Anybody that has to travel to I-15 knows that coming home in the evening is ridiculous anytime after 4 o'clock. We are turning into the next California, and our growth has to slow down. We have to put the infrastructure in. And I really hope that this planning committee is looking at roads. Safety is another thing. I am scared to death of Mountain View Corridor. I have an 18-year-old who has faced a wrong-way driver on that road twice, coming home from working at Target. And when she comes home in complete hysterics because she almost got hit head-on and she feels like she did something wrong because she didn't flash her lights at them to help them understand what they were doing, I worry about it. We're going to put another 8,000 cars on that road and all of our other roads. We've already had deaths on that road. We've got to come up with a better solution. I don't think the high density is the answer. Even though I'm an advocate for home ownership, we've got to do it, and we've got to do it smart. And I hope and I pray that you're looking at another east to west route into our city, because all of us that live in the southwest end of Herriman have to deal with 134th just to get home. And this is just going to add to that struggle. So I just hope that that's being considered. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Lisa Reitzel. I live basically in the neighborhood by the new high school, new elementary school. We have kind of a unique perspective. We just moved here from California 6 weeks ago, so I bring a word of caution. I understand what it's like to have growth happen without a whole lot of forethought, a whole lot of infrastructure planning. I mean, I come from a state where that's kind of been a rampant problem for many, many years. And I also work at the new elementary school. And one of the things that I found myself thinking about was when you said the difference in housing here was maybe 300, in the range of 300 units. I started thinking about how many families that would be, how many children that would be. We have roughly about 650 students right now at Ridgeview Elementary School. We, I think, have a capacity of around in the 800 range. So I'm starting to wonder, you know, we're filling those up right now. We have maybe 2 to 3 new students coming in every week, even without these new developments. So when you start talking about this change in density, you're really talking about when you're converting all of this, which could have been commercial space, into retail or into residential space, you've got a lot of new students coming into these schools too, and I don't know if this has been addressed with the school district. I haven't heard anyone speak to that, so I kind of wanted to just put that out there, that we're kind of in a point where we're going to reach capacity really soon, without this going in. And also, as far as commute times, traffic, I know that traffic around that school right now is already pretty bad. And when I'm looking at the replacement of where they wanted to move the new church building to and trying to figure out how that would work on that really narrow road that we have right now to access getting our kids to and from school, there's already been problems there. So I just kind of wanted to address that because I hadn't really heard anyone else talk about traffic and how that was going to work around the school and the capacity of students at the school. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, we'll close the public hearing on item 4.4, and then we will move on to 4.5. We will come back to all of these, but we'll move on to 4.5 to address it through city staff, and then the developer, and then also public comment.
All right, so item 4.5 is the planned development overlay zone. So this zone goes over the entire property. Again, it's an overlay zone, so it works with the underlying zone. The PUD, the planned development overlay zone, again, is a legislative decision, so it will go to the city council for a final decision. They are required to have a neighborhood meeting, which, like we've stated, they have had. A preliminary site plan is also part of the requirement of the planned development overlay zone. And that's where we get the requirements for 20% open space, the design guidelines, and some of the other stuff we've talked about. Again, the city council will have a meeting, and they will make a decision that will include the site plan, the design guidelines, all of that will be attached. So again, this is the old site plan, so we'll just kind of skip past it. But again, the site plan would be part of the plan development overlay zone. I'm just going to briefly go through some of their design guidelines. They're about 40 pages, but I'm just going to go through some of it. Again, the setbacks are laid out in the design guidelines. The minimum home size is laid out there. Things that we usually look for.
Brent, do you mind going back
Yeah.
to just the last one and just talking about the parking a little bit, because it's been brought up probably 5 or 6 times?
Sure. So all of the units have 2-car garages and 2-car driveways. All of the garages, all the driveways are a minimum 21 feet, which is different. Most of the ones in Rosecrest are 18 or 19 feet. So these will all be 21 feet. But yeah, so they all have garages and driveways.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. There's a requirement, again, like we usually look for, which is they can't build the same house next door, across the street from each other. It talks about 4-sided architecture, specifically on corner lots. This just gives you an idea of the range of lot sizes in the area. And it ranges from, some of the smaller ones are like 4,100 square feet up to 12,000 square feet. The access, and again, the layouts changed a little bit over here, but the roads are essentially the same. There will be larger 60-foot roads to access the school, the church, the park, and then the internal roads are our typical 53-foot local road. Again, the open space and amenities that have been talked about, the trail, the park, and this is all part of the plan development requirements. And then just some of the elevations they've submitted to show what the typical elevations would look like. Again, these would all have to meet the design guidelines. Townhomes, and then condos, but we don't have condos anymore. So that's what I've got. Again, for the PUDs, the PUD, we're really looking at the site plan details, the design, the architecture, that kind of stuff is what we're really looking at with the PUD, so.
And that still will come back, right? This is just to make the
So you're
zone.
approving the preliminary site plan. The final site plan still has to come back for final approval. That just comes back to the planning commission for final, when they do their plats.
What was the width of Sentinel Ridge Boulevard again? The width.
The width?
That one's 90.
Right there, 90.
90? Yeah.
Okay. And then
That's not including the slip lanes.
and then we're talking about the primary between, I guess, C and B, that road on the backside, that's 63. So that's a pretty wide road still, too.
The other thing that's going to help out the traffic is it's going to be tying to Mountain View. So right now, the only way to get out of this area is to go back up Rosecrest Road.
And they can take a left right onto Mountain View.
This would be a right only, but you would be able to go
Get right onto Mountain View
north
right
right
there,
off
yeah.
Mountain
Or
View.
Now,
right
the
here,
road
yeah.
D will go to Mountain View, too. So both
Yep.
those should help with the infrastructure.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
So that's one good thing about moving this, if we move it along.
All right. Thank you.
That's all I've got.
All right. And then I'll turn to the developer if he has, or the applicant if he has anything else.
Steve Maddox, Edge Homes. The cross-section for Sentinel is 120.
Okay.
It's a behemoth of a road. First of all, I have taken hundreds of hours from staff, hundreds of hours from the community, and hundreds of hours from City Council and Planning Commissioner. So I want to thank everybody for that time, because I think there's a myriad of opinions and thoughts and items that have gone into this. I also want to welcome everybody to Herriman. And Lauren, who I have a lot of respect for, who is a federal parole officer and carries a big presence, and in our very first meeting, had some very strong opinions, and I've come to respect his leadership and what he is. He raised his hand and he was, and I'm going to paraphrase, but he said, "I'm part of the problem. I moved here 4 years ago, but I have an opinion." Those are all super valuable to us, and I appreciated the candor and the honesty. I'm a transplant, and it's an incredible place to live, and we seem to be this vibrant community along the entire Wasatch Front, and every time you drive along the core roads, there are additional commercial buildings going up. And I guess there's positives and there's negatives to the cycle of of who we are as a community. I want to address for one moment the density question. And although this may feel rushed, although this may feel as if we haven't vetted everything, I find myself in a precarious position and want to shift that to the Planning Commission and ultimately City Council. I have a seller that is seeking to have a contract executed on that I have signed. I have a candidate in the Riverton portion that is saying, we are offended that you have not presented a plan and that you are not under construction currently. I am compelled contractually to begin that dialogue and that conversation within 7 days that I have agreed to in perpetuity now for about 6 months with Riverton City. So a lot of what will be decided this evening from Planning Commission and ultimately from City Council will have a strong impact on what will be done to the north. The seller of the property, SLR, has indicated that they look at this as a global sale, that the Riverton Herriman boundary line is agnostic to them, that this is a density item that they will look at collectively, but have charged as Edge Homes with trying to make this as nice as possible, as congruent as possible, and to be able to enhance the beauty of what exists there now. So I am 100% confident that we are not able to meet the demands of all of the infrastructure for the city. We are not able to meet traffic lights. We are not able to meet a lot of those, but feel as if the items that we have addressed and will continue to address with staff and with City Council, that we have addressed the core items that exist here. Thank you.
I have one question for you, Steve.
Yes, sir.
The garages, I know that was brought up by people, and some people haven't been working with you for a while. Your townhomes will have garage space to fit 2 vehicles, correct?
2-car garages.
With the appropriate garbage cans and everything, correct?
Yeah. Adam, you ask a question that I can't tell if you're making fun of me or not.
No, I'm being straight up.
No, we've had someone come in without it fitting.
Okay.
So,
well, yeah, I know you've brought plans before because I've required you to bring plans with garbage cans showing in the garage space. So.
Yeah, not only that, if you look at the layout of our alley load, we have provided parking that goes above and beyond. We've created parking in front of units. So the item that was discussed earlier, we're concerned about parking. We have created alley load. Part of the problems with alley load is they typically front green space, which creates at times problems with visitor parking. So we have tried to orient this so that parking and friction on those slip roads is created as a traffic calming and a traffic slower. So thank you for the question, and we have addressed the city ordinance. I think we understand it and have applied generously the guidelines.
Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you. I think that's it. And this is the last public hearing on this particular item, and so I will open the public hearing at this time.
Good evening. I'm Forrest Sickles. I think my only comments were, having a planning kind of background and a traditional urban design background, I think I only had 2 real concerns on the plan, and one of them being the connectivity. You got a lot of small blocks, which is great, but your connectivity is all funneled into a 120-foot, I believe you said, collector road. And so the question is, you've got schools on one side, and you've got your neighborhood on the other, and the schools are also bordered by a highway. So how are the people going to traverse from the residential area to the school areas? 120-foot easement is a big road, and I'm a big fan of slip roads, I am. Paris has some of the most remarkable slip roads. But the roads that they have there, they're maxed 60-foot width. They're not 120 feet. And so you don't feel uncomfortable traversing a slip road condition. But if it's 120 feet, there's no way you're going to have kids crossing that street. And I think by the time we look at how many lanes are in that collector road, that becomes a highway. And I think that's a concern. I do like to see the mix of residential types. I think that's something that Herriman needs to allow for the lower income people to have somewhere to start their lives. Right now, you know, it's a bedroom community, and the majority of the houses are going to be moving to people that are in their senior years, that are more established. And if we want Herriman to continue to grow and thrive as a community, as a family community, we need to make affordable options for those that are starting families as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Katrina Jolly again. Steve knows I never stop talking, so he's probably used to this. So, as per Riverton, like I made a comment to our SLR guy over here, that why can't they move some of that commercial that they're planning there over to our side and put some of those on the other side of 134th, but that's not their plan, because there's just so much going through there. Not only that, there is a gentleman that came to one of our meetings from Riverton, and his kids go to the grade school right here at Ridgeview Elementary. It takes him, and he lives right next to the junior high, 20 minutes to make the loop to get his kids because of how the school's let out and everything else and all the traffic going both ways. He can't get out. He's not happy. It's not all the Riverton people that are happy or want this. I don't even know if the people want this or if it's just their city officials that say this would be great. We can get our bunch in of the things. I really think that we need less density. That's the most we need is less density, more infrastructure, as we've talked about. I know he made a comment, Adam did, about like things that he wouldn't think that it looks great, it works, some of the things work, he wants to get rid of commercial. I don't want to get rid of commercial. None of us want to get rid of commercial. I know that's your view, but I feel like even there, you could put a Crumble. All the high school kids would go there. You could put a Swig there. You could put a fast food place. You could do all kinds of different things to bring something there, even if it's not a big commercial thing, because that's a daily thing that the kids could use and we could make money off of. Thank you.
Thank you.
Nathan Rawlings. I live just south of the proposed development. First, I want to say I appreciate all the effort that the Planning Commission and that Edge Homes has put into this proposal. I can see that obviously it's improved quite a bit over the original proposal. I think overall it's pretty positive. There's two concerns that I have. One is with parking. Parking is so often talked about. We need more parking, more parking, more parking. And you look at what happened with Shadowrun and how many people are parking out on Sentinel Ridge, and I think what's happened there is we know the realities of the economic situation. People end up subletting and making sure that every room in their home is used, and so often that ends up with people parking out on these streets. So just adding more parking to the development is a concern to me, because adding more parking just is going to add more cars, and it's going to be more people that would end up subletting and having 4 different people living in a home. And so I would like to maybe see something to understand that we're not going to have a replica of what happened with Shadowrun. There is also some burden on the city, that the city's enforcement of the parking situation along Sentinel Ridge is lacking, and it's currently a public safety hazard. The other thing I want to make sure is there was a mention yesterday in the meeting that there is a potential for a road, a connector, a right in, right out, on a Mountain View corridor just directly north of the high school. I want to make sure that we exercise all potential options to make sure that's in place, because we talk about the traffic load. That's really the only thing I'm seeing that's a realistic way of reducing the load to those schools and keeping the neighborhood, or the traffic out of the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. And just a reminder, if you have made public comment, please fill out the comment form in the back and present it to Wendy before you leave. If there's any more public comments, this is the last chance. Thank you. Thank you for the comment. Let's try to reserve it for earlier or different times during public comment. At this time, I will close the public comment, and I will turn to the Planning Commission for additional comments or discussion.
So I want to echo some of the things that Adam has said. I am totally in favor of commercial as well. We need it desperately, but we need it in the right places. I'm not convinced that this is the right place. With the concern I have with traffic, and maybe I'll bring up another point about traffic since that was a question as well. Whenever a development comes in, there has to be a traffic impact study that is performed to make sure that whatever demand is going to be out there can be accommodated. There's a lot of growth obviously happening out here. There's a lot of plans in the future for Mountain View Corridor. There is a plan for that connection to be made just north of the high school to connect to Mountain View Corridor, and then also for 138 South to connect to Mountain View Corridor. But that connection will be at a frontage road. Just keep that in mind. You cannot get on the freeway except at 134th or clear back at Rose Crest intersection. So to get in and out of this area for commercial, I think will be very difficult. I agree we need to leave some space open and try and provide that opportunity for the proper commercial to come in. It will be limited. Just keep that in mind. It will be limited. And the fact that we can move 270 units from west of Mountain View Corridor to this location that is going to be able to accommodate a lot better, I'm all for as well. I think that's a great benefit for the community. As mentioned, those 1,100 or so vehicles that are out there traveling on 126, 118 will not have to do so. They're going to be able to manage it better with corridors, Bangerter and Mountain View, that'll better accommodate the traffic. I do not use 134th now. Starting, this week, I found a different way to get out of the community. I agree, it's a mess. There are future plans. Mountain View Corridor, when that becomes a freeway, and all the way up to SR 201. Right? That connection now from Mountain View Corridor from 4100 South is going to be made up to 201. That's going to relieve a lot of traffic going east and west. When that becomes a freeway, that's going to be relieving a lot of traffic going east and west. A lot of the people that want to go east and west want to go north and south. But if they can do it north and south right here at Mountain View, it's going to make a huge difference. Bangerter Highway, right? We're going to have interchanges all along Bangerter Highway. That'll be great. It's going to help us a lot. There are some growing pains that we all have to go through. I'm going through them now as well. So just keep that in mind. It's going to take some time because there are fiscal constraints on budgets to get these improvements done. So back to this. I think moving development, the 270 units, is a big plus to this site. Trying to preserve the corridor, commercial corridor, as was mentioned by Adam, I also am in favor with, because it's going to be very unique, the commercial that comes into here. As mentioned, the school is gobbling up 20 acres of that commercial development that's happening. So whether it's zoned that way or not, it's going to be a school. So if we do this correctly, we work with the traffic, get the connections made like we need to, everybody's going to win. So there's my thoughts.
Thank you.
All right, so a lot of what I heard from everyone was the traffic, the taxes. We want income coming into the city. And one of the things that I really liked that someone said was bringing jobs into Herriman. We have so many talented people in Herriman, and I really think that we can use this commercial space. I don't agree with Adam. I think that no matter what, that this potential commercial area could be something. It doesn't have to be a grocery store, but it could be an employment center. It could be something, but I don't think that giving up 26 acres of commercial area is the right thing to do with this. We don't know if this middle school is 100% going to happen. It could happen, and if it happens, we don't really have any control over that, but I'm not willing to give up any of that commercial area. I do like what they've done with the density, and I think that they've done a good job working with the community. But we need somewhere to be able to spend our money in Herriman or earn our money in Herriman. That's my 2 cents.
Thank you, Heather.
I have a couple comments. I was looking at the general plan that we have, and in there it says Herriman is capturing less than 20% of the estimated retail purchases made by its residents, as residents are leaving the city to buy goods and services in almost every major retail category. So for me, I see that the school district owns most of the commercial piece of it. So for me, I look at it and say, okay, well, if the developer wants to do something with commercial, maybe we need to move commercial into a piece of property that actually have ownership of, like moving it up to Sentinel Ridge as an option, instead of saying, you know, maybe we might get commercial in 5 years, we might not. At least we're actually playing with a piece of property that they have control over. So that's my first comment. Second is all the townhomes on these slip roads. I love the slip roads because I think it's a really wide road. I think it's dangerous. Putting all these townhomes, that drives small families to these locations. And for me, it makes more sense, kind of like Draper, where they have the slip roads, they have really, really nice homes, you know, over $500,000 homes along the slip roads. And to me, that makes more sense to have those higher end homes along those slip roads. So one, you don't get too many cars because home prices are only going to go up. You're going to get townhomes with people that have 3 cars. You know, they might have 2-car garages, but they're going to have to put their 3rd car somewhere else. So that's one of my concerns. And so I'd like to see more single-family detached homes along Sentinel Ridge on those slip roads. And then another concern is just, yeah, the impact on schools. It'd be nice to have lower density so that all of the people that live in this community can actually attend the elementary school and not have to go outside of their community for school. So that's my comments.
Thank you, Brody.
The one question I do have, I guess more for the city, is with that intersection at Sentinel Ridge and what'll be 138th, why is it that a light can't be put in there? My concern is that it'll turn into what Roadcrest and Autumncrest was, where that was a big safety concern. And with how much traffic there is going to be there, inevitably, regardless of what happens with that property, what can we do to make that more efficient for the residents?
There is a signal planned for that intersection in the city's transportation master.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I was thinking about this just while everybody was speaking. So I moved out to Herriman 17 and a half years ago. And Rosecrest Road was just like this area. There was commercial all along that. Every church that you see along Rosecrest Road and every school that you see along Rosecrest Road, when I moved to Herriman, they were commercial. It is illegal for the city to actually stop those types of uses going into commercial. And my concern is even if we preserve the 26 acres, it will be those type of uses. I don't think that it will be the commercial we all are hoping for. And that's why I would prefer to control it with a residential cap. And that's why I'm trying to say that, is because that way it doesn't turn into, it gives more opportunity for more of that real use when everybody is seeing taxes. And that's why the middle school is there. When this was brought up, everybody brought up the general plan. I want to pull back to this. When the council asked us to kick off the initial general plan study, they wanted to make sure there was some commercial corridor preservation areas protected. The Planning Commission and the council sat in a room and we talked about which areas we should do. It was unanimous by the Planning Commission that we, at that time, and it wasn't all of you, I'm not saying that it was, but at that time that piece of commercial was not to be included because A, it's a school, so what's the benefit? It's not real. It's owned by the school. All they have to do is say, I want to build a school there. We can't even tell them what kind of fence to put in. That's pretty much you guys all know this. So that's why I think we need to really restrict the commercial, because we're really only talking about 26 acres. And that this development is enhancing. It's giving a 10-acre piece of ground. It's solving a gigantic storm drain problem, which solves other detention ponds all the way up the city, because now they're not sitting full of water. It solves so many things that no matter what we want to do along Mountain View, there is no way those will ever be signalized freeway intersections. They are right in, right out only. There is no other way around it. And so I think that's going to prohibit it so much that it will end up being schools and churches, where right now we have the ability to cap that and control it to what we really want it to do. And that's why I actually agree with what the developer is proposing, as well as I'd like to highlight that I have worked in development for over 20 years, and this is the first time I've ever seen where a city can put a cap on another city via our master plan. I've never seen that. So to me, that's a huge win that I don't think anybody, that's how a lot of this area came into Herriman, is it was back, if everybody remembers, the Bluffdale times and things like that. So I've never heard of a city being able to actually do that with a development agreement, and the developer's willing to do that. So to me, it's a win-win-win-win. Yes, it's a little higher than we all thought. Yes, we're going to lose a little bit of the commercial, but to me, it's worth that. I still have my bigger concern is the 100 units on that commercial, because I feel it will resort. So that's where I'd like the developer to stand up and see if there would be an issue if we tied both of those two pieces of property. And Bryn, if you could circle it for me, because this is what I think we should do, is I think that piece and that piece should be reserved for commercial with a cap of density units, probably in the 8 to 10 range. And then the rest, I think, should continue as it's going. That gives us 10 acres-ish. It's 14 acres, I think. You said 9 and 5. So I'm thinking it's about 14 acres of maybe commercial, but if it doesn't go commercial after a certain period of time, which will have to be done with a development agreement, then that would make sense that it resorts back to a manageable 10-ish units per acre that actually fits in with the community. You wouldn't even notice a difference. Or best case, we get the commercial everybody says, and I'm wrong, and I owe somebody lunch. So I'm good with that. But I would rather make sure we get what we need long-term.
I guess the only thing off of that I would differ is, like I said, with Sentinel Ridge, with the townhomes, moving them closer to the regional park and getting some larger homes there so that can, I don't know, for me that's a safety hazard with that many homes bunched in there along Sentinel Ridge, is possibly shifting those to another location and having larger homes along that road.
So the one thing that I think about with that, Brody, is we actually, once this is developed out, you have Sentinel Ridge that the townhomes will use. You have the road behind it between the proposed middle school. You also have, if they come out of the development on the bottom, you have it connecting to Mountain View, and now you have a connection to Mountain View on the top. I am actually not as concerned with a lot of the infrastructure as I was before. Some of my concerns are the width of the road on the north and the south side that goes out to Mountain View, to make sure that it is a wider road. But if it is a viable width, I actually think it's laid out pretty well in this scenario.
And right now, I want to pull everybody back. Remember, the only three motions for us is, do we want to do a general plan amendment? Has nothing to do with road sizes. Then the next one is, do we want to rezone it? Again, no road sizes. And the third one is to rezone to add a PUD overlay, which just basically says, yes, you can do a PD here. So to me, all of that still has to come back. So that's why I'm really, I kind of want to, I think we have to pull it back and say, I know we opened it up so we could hear everybody's comments at once so they could understand what's going on. But to me, we have to decide first the general plan piece. And that's where we start talking where to put the commercial and what size to put that commercial and where to keep the density. Then the next piece will be as it flows out. Because obviously, if it doesn't go one way, we're going to change the next two. So.
Correct. And then my
But
thoughts.
I just want to highlight
Oh,
that.
yeah.
I agree with everybody on
I
the
think we
roads,
should-
and I want to talk about all that. But we got to remember,
Take it in
we're
chunks.
this is just a concept, kind of. The biggest thing is 600 units, and where do we put commercial and residential? That's pretty much the bulk of what we're really talking about.
And then my thoughts in regard to this, and can we pull the picture up again? We're talking too much, huh?
What would you like to see?
Just the one you had it
Anything?
on.
Not black.
So first, when we look at the general plan and adjusting what it says there, which they're asking for it to change to R210, I look at the preservation of the commercial, and I'm in agreement with Adam that we need to preserve, and I think that 15 acres is about what we should do, pretty much from Sentinel to Mountain View, if we can work with the developer or the middle school, the Jordan School District, on the other piece of property. Now, I don't agree this is going to be a traditional retail spot that is even viable. I think that if we have something that goes here, and I wanted to share one of the public comments, and I wish I could find it in the email because we do get some emails of public comments where it was from someone who's associated with like the Herriman Arts. And one of the things that they said was, we would love to have a community center Herriman Arts facility, and this may be a viable spot for that. There are some areas or some commercial type entities that are non-traditional like that, or a rec center, or different things like that that may fit in this area really well. Now, that's a lot bigger conversation with the city, with funding, with everything else, and it may not be the best location. But I think the preservation of commercial for enough time for us to catch up with some of our growth to see if it is viable is needed. Whether we decide that's 7 years, 5 years, 10 years, which a lot of the staff and city council will decide, I think has to happen. Now, I also believe that this development makes total sense to take the density from the other area that is, it would be west of the current high school in Herriman. Well, I guess we have two now. So Herriman High School, the Mustangs, and move it over here. We have a lot better infrastructure to handle the vehicles that will come out on Mountain View and then go over to Bangor here than we ever will west of the high school. It's just not viable. And with that being said, and it's unfortunate, but we don't have any control over 134. That is all Riverton from Mountain View to Bangor. And yes, it needs to be widened. I don't think a single person in this room would disagree with me. It does not flow very well. And there's a lot of traffic on it, but that's not something we have control over as Herriman. I think that at least from the general plan, a preservation of the commercial is needed. And so that's my opinion. I'm only one in this body. But with that being said, I think we probably should look at potentially considering a motion on the first item, which was 3.3, no, 4.3. 4.2. Nope. 4.3.
4.3, sorry.
Which is a request for general plan amendment to change property from low-density residential and commercial to medium-density residential. And we do need to keep in mind that with what they're saying in this general plan request, and this is a recommendation to the city council, I want everyone to take note. This is going before the city council. You need to be there. You need to voice your opinions. You need to help to get out what you would like to see. They listen to you. They're the ones that you elected. And they want to try to make a change.
They're also the ones that have the approval for budgets and things. So if you have road frustrations and things, they're the ones that can help build that into their budgets and take care of such problems.
But with that being said, when we look at the current general plan with what they're wanting to change, it doesn't show a preservation of commercial. And so we do, if that's a recommendation to the city council, that we need to look at that.
So how would we tie in that? I like what Adam's saying with the
Because the
commercial that they have
proposed is the one on the
proposed,
right.
but also
We can
grabbing that
change
little
what they're
chunk
proposing.
too. Because let's say worst case scenario, the school takes the whole piece of commercial, but we
Which
still
I think
have this
is
little-
most likely.
Yeah, but then we still have this little corner piece that's commercial, so we're not out.
Wait, are you talking about the top left corner?
Yeah.
So we don't have access to
No,
that
not the
right
top. I'm like Sentinel Ridge, and where 138 is.
The 9 to 10.
If the school doesn't play, the likelihood of us getting commercial off of Sentinel would be even drastically less.
I agree, but it could be retail or just like, I don't know, something to
I mean, right now, the
supplement the
piece that
Mountain
they're
Ridge High
showing,
School.
the piece that they're showing right now is obviously already commercial on the general plan.
And that's all school, correct?
That's not, right.
Correct.
So to preserve that piece, you don't need to do anything, right? Because
So
that's already commercial.
kind of what I'm thinking would be that, I asked earlier how many units was in that other piece. 54. So what I would think we should do is, right now they are proposing 600, pull out that 54 and dial it down to, what was that, 546 for residential. And then with the preservation of the two pieces, the 5-acre commercial and the 9-acre commercial, allow for a density up to 10. That still would give you that basically pulls that density back if the commercial doesn't go. And to me, it's like it's a win-win. It gives us opportunity to see if it is even feasible. It does, I really worry if it doesn't go commercial and we just say, yeah, let's put 20 units per acre on 5 acres. I just don't think it's gonna work. And so to me, I think it's a win in both, gives us some transition time. And I'll be honest, the council's the one that's gonna make the decision at the end anyway.
I think it's a reasonable recommendation. Are you looking to make a motion, Adam?
So I guess we're just in
I
clarification.
wanna hear if anybody has issues. I was kind of thinking more like 9 units per acre, but I rounded up to 10 because I feel like I'm audibly.
So just a clarification, the 27.7 acres, you were saying you would pull that addition, 9 acres out of that.
Go back to their map. So basically what.
So hard.
I'm sorry,
know.
there's not a whole lot to look from.
Right.
So basically I'm saying the commercial is 5, this pod.
Right, is 9.
Is 9.
So go back to the other one.
Pull the 54 units out of that.
Yep. But what we're essentially doing is on this recommendation, we're pulling 9 acres out of that 27. Right?
No,
Is
no.
what the recommendation
No, we're
would be.
pulling 15 acres, and they're hoping to be able to negotiate.
Okay,
to
I wanted to
take
make
the
sure that was
5
clear that, because, yeah, the
With my
shapes are
understanding,
different.
with my understanding.
Right. Okay.
Adam? I'm just trying to clarify.
And maybe we go with 8. I don't know. That's why
Well, I
I
think
don't
what I would
need
say is
it.
if it
I
is
need
15
planning commission
acres-
interjection, not just Adam's ideas.
No,
That's what I'm trying to say.
I'm not saying anything because I like where you're going. Huh? I like where you're going.
Okay.
So that's.
If it is 15 acres, I think you're essentially giving them the same 150 units anyway, right?
That's why I'm not pulling them away. I'm basically pulling more of the commercial out to see if it
option.
happens.
Yeah.
If it doesn't, it blends it better than
So what if the school district
100
says?
on 5 acres.
What if the school district says no?
And if the
Like,
school
we don't want to do anything, would you still hold them on the other 9?
Well, it's still 15.
I think I'd hold them, but I mean, they'd have, 5
I think
years, 7 years.
that's a new can of worms that I think,
I
if it was
understand.
me, I would say, why even do commercial?
Right.
Because
I think we base it on our recommendation this is what we would like to see with
Assuming
the
that-
switch with the school district. That amounts to 15 acres. It would switch the
I keep
border
thinking the
of
developer will pop up and have major problems with
Gordon
my
School
idea, but I
District.
don't think they are, so. But again, I think it's solving a lot of people's problems. It's not giving us 25 acres of commercial, which I don't think we'll ever get anyway.
That's
But-
exactly right. I think that was my point I was going to make. We're not going to get 25 acres of commercial in this.
And if they can't
Spot.
structure the deal with, to me, it's
The access.
contingent upon the deal with the school district, either way.
We're more likely to get the 5 to 15, but 25 is going to be very difficult with the access here, is my opinion.
But I think that we can still, like, if the school district builds there and we lose that commercial area, then we're still giving up too much of our commercial area. But what I'm hearing is that you're saying that people won't drive to this area. It will be a frontage road. We discussed that in our work meeting. And there's a lot of businesses along I-15 that have frontage roads that you can, yeah, it's a little more complicated to access, but you can still access it. And to the point that our members were making, they want to spend their money in Herriman. We'll make that extra drive. I do all the time, just to make sure that I'm spending my money in
And I'm gonna get
Herriman.
back to what Adam, I've been here 15 years, 16 years. Same thing, we've got these pockets of commercial that have never happened. So we have to do it smart, or you're gonna come in and you're gonna
Heather,
lose your opportunities
What I
as well.
think we're saying is if the school doesn't play with the developer, you're not only gonna have to go behind you're gonna have to go behind the entire middle school to get to this commercial, and that's what we're talking about. And so to me, my motion would
I
be
look
to
at
be
that and-
contingent upon the school playing, the school swap working.
I look at that and you maybe get a gas station or a
Maybe.
senior facility. And that's about the best we're gonna get if we can't get to Mountain View.
Yeah, we haven't made any motion, so the developer can pop in and chime in with whatever they'd like.
There's just so many other options that we haven't considered that need to be considered.
Well,
Which I think is wise then to do the motion like we're looking to preserve an opportunity for commercial. I
But-
still think that is a viable
And I think
option for
taking a
commercial.
minute and letting the developer share any additional comments if they have any is viable at this point.
Yeah, especially because they gave
Since
us the
it's
last
been
plan and the
6
last
months
minute.
of time.
I think my change is a last minute thing too.
Density transfers on the fly are impossible. I want to make just a general comment about the commercial element. The seller does not view the property as deemed commercial. They would look at it as an opportunity to do chapel sites and/or a private school. And so this preservation of jobs and the preservation of commercial is not something in the seller's design. The commercial element that I presented tonight as a reminder is a reflection of Edge's commitment to the commercial preservation, not SLR's commitment to the preservation. So chapel sites can be consolidated on any portion within here, and a school can be consolidated, and that would be Plan B. As far as the density and the preservation of that property, I think we'd be willing to entertain that thought. I think that the sunset clause that we would insist on would be tighter, at least a portion of it at a 36-month or 48-month or something that's reasonable, so that we are not in a perpetual hold, and then we would have a contingency plan of residential rolling out in duration if commercial wasn't viable.
Would you have an issue with 8 units per acre on the
I
two?
think the density, if we kept it static, Adam, is reasonable. I don't think we need to go above that. I don't think we need to go beneath that. So that's reasonable.
Okay. I just don't want you to put 100 units on
I
5 acres. Do
concur.
you understand what I'm saying there?
I don't
right?
want to build anything there. I would like to do a nice something. Arts would be fantastic. So the desire isn't to just preserve. The desire is for SLR not to hold property, as Mike from Momentum just indicated, and you alluded to it, so I will. Commercial property that he's had for 20 years in a desperation to get rid of and get off of his balance sheet is to sell to the options that we talked about. The C2 zone allows a lot of permitted uses that would not be great here. So I think that our thought in the 5.2, 5 acres or 5.5 acres that we talked about are very restricted uses. And they would not be utilized on things that would not produce jobs and would not produce income, which the C2 zone allows a lot of options that are commercial, that are non-income and non-job related. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm getting ready to make a motion. I just don't know how to say it, so just give me a second.
I think some of us still have comments.
Yeah, no, I think as we look at it, I do agree about 15 acres to try to get it across from Sentinel to Mount View. But I'm also looking at it from the perspective of it's always become a little inevitable that we end up getting a school, we end up getting charter schools, different things like that are allowed in any of these zones. And I think with 15 acres, there's a better chance we will preserve some true commercial. And if we go much smaller between a church and other schools and things like that, there may be no chance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree.
But you're kind of rolling the dice on and betting on that's what's going to happen. It's going to be a church or it's going to be a school. There is potential for other things.
We've had a rough time
I
the
know
last
you guys
5
have
years.
dealt with that,
We've had a
but
rough time the last 5-7 years.
but it
with
is a
this.
what if.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It is not a what if. The LDS Church owns the property. They are going to utilize it for the highest and best use. So the what if really doesn't exist because I have been instructed that I can move chapel sites and utilize the ground as necessary. So I guess we have a unique seller in this scenario that has a use for the property as is today, and they're agnostic as to the zoning.
So will we really even get the 5 acres?
Well, I think if we get the 5 acres and the additional 9, then we at least get an option. If we just go for the 5, we could end up with a church and a middle school.
And then if we
No
go too
commercial.
big, right? If we go too big, then they say, "Hi, middle school, do your thing," and then they're already saying, "We'll sell that commercial to charter schools. It'll just be school central, and we don't get anything, and the traffic gets worse for everybody." So I think that, I think we can, I know what I'm going to say, so if anybody has more to add to it, I think it's good to vet that out, but I think it's going to take a motion to actually make a decision.
Look to the Planning Commission for a motion on item 4.3.
I just don't know how to say it because I don't know that map. So if you go to the other one,
The site plan?
the site plan,
That's the new one.
that's the new one. So I'm going to have to kind of pre-say this before I actually make a motion because I need staff to see if it makes sense. So everybody's going to have to listen to it a little bit, and then I can. So I think we should approve.
Recommend approval.
So recommend approval. The master plan amendment to adjust all of the land from Sentinel Ridge Road to the east as proposed by the developer. And that we,
To medium density?
to medium density. Then I propose that we have we work with the middle school to turn the land, and the commercial and the, I'm gonna call it Pod 1, because I don't know what else to call it, Pod 1 that's right next to the commercial, would be reserved as commercial until 4 years, after which it resorts back to 8 units per acre. And that the entire residential, with the exception of what I just said, is tied to 546 units. Does that make sense enough for you guys?
And that was your
That was a preamble.
That's not a motion
That's
yet,
a
right?
preamble, yeah. I think maybe what we need to do is modify that motion to have the sunset be negotiated between the
So-
city
City
and
council, yeah.
the city.
And I'm okay with that.
In the MDA.
I don't know what I need to say
Right.
for this.
As a part of the MDA.
Just because we're just, because we're
Right,
just
so
talking
we're
general
talking
plan.
just general plan. I
Right.
think some of that stuff would go in the MDA.
Okay, fair.
Okay.
So I think what you're saying is you would retain commercial on that portion and that portion that I'm pointing at.
Yes.
Correct. Yeah.
So if Bryn could circle so everybody's clear, I'm calling that Pod 1 and the one that's labeled commercial.
Approximately 14 acres.
Approximately 14,
Okay.
whatever that is, because we don't have this on drawing.
Okay, end of your motion then.
And I-
That 4-year stuff.
So the only
Okay,
question
fair.
I had
I'll-
is, are you looking at phasing it 1, 2 towards 4 years for that 9 acres?
What they're
and-
telling me
I
is
wouldn't
all
do
the
it
phasing and
time.
stuff is done with the PUD,
MDA.
Okay.
MDA, this
All right.
overlay. So I guess
is
what I'm,
just the general plan
I'll
motion.
retract now, I know what to say in my motion.
We can't end this motion.
Not in here, it's later on.
And that's
Heather,
up to
we can.
council anyway.
So Adam, is that the motion made?
To, yes, what John said. I don't know how to say it.
Yes, please.
Okay. I move to recommend approval to city council to amend the general plan with a slight alteration that the commercial and next to it, pod 1, is reserved for commercial for a period of time.
Don't do for a period of time, just put commercial.
Commercial.
You're not even changing the general plan there, because it's already commercial.
Okay.
That's true.
But is decreasing
What about the
Okay, then I
other
know how better way to
piece?
say it. I'm
R210.
to only allow medium residential in the other pod that's on that side of
The
Seminole.
non-pod
We'll
one.
say pod 2, the one
Pod
under
2.
one.
Sorry, guys, I
one
don't have
below.
anything to reference other than.
The
what
one with the
you gave us.
neighborhood park.
They both have an.
Is that correct?
Is that
Oh,
helpful?
the larger neighborhood park
that
with the
helpful?
bathroom.
Well, I know what it is, and we'll have a legal description before we,
Is that clear? Because I'm ready to second, if you're ready to.
I've got it in my mind.
You know what I need. I don't know how else to say it without lines. So,
Before you said something about the 546 units, do you still want to say that?
Would that be
that's
with
the
gen-
medium
different-
density that we're
that's-
talking about
that's
is
something
tied to
else.
546 units.
That pod and the rest of it.
That pod and everything east of Sentinel Ridge. Because to me, the rest is with the PUD discussion I'll talk about in a minute. That's why I'm lowering it down to 546, is to pull out what they had on the other side.
The units is really the PUD.
The units will be in a different, that's a different motion as well, right? So it's just the land use, recommend approval of the land use changes as discussed.
It's reserving roughly 14 to 15 acres of commercial and allowing the rest to be zoned to R210.
Perfect. There you go. There's the motion, right?
You guys good?
We got it.
Okay, that was my motion.
Motion made by Adam,
I'll second.
second by Andy. We'll call for a vote. Adam?
Yes.
Heather?
No.
Andy?
Yes.
Joy?
Yes.
And Brody?
No.
So
3-2.
3-2. So we'll move on to item 4.4. And just to be sure, that was Brody and Heather with no's, on that right?
Yeah.
So this is the rezone from A1 to 210. So I'd like to make a recommendation for approval with a alteration that
Pod 1 remain.
pod 1 remain commercial.
There you go.
Not commercial, it'd be, remain A1.
Remain A1.
Remain A1. I'll second.
Motion by Adam and a second by Andy. And we'll call for a vote again. Adam?
Yes.
Heather?
No.
Andy?
Yes.
Joy?
Yes.
And Brody?
No.
And that passes with a 3-2, or passes with a recommendation to city council.
And now to add in some of that other language. Do we have a?
Then a motion,
blank
this is
one
for
of these?
4.5.
Yes. I just thought it might be good for us to write pod 1 and pod 2, so you guys have something on record, and then I'll show everybody.
Horrible, absolutely horrible.
So I'm just gonna pass this along to the planning commission so they can agree with what I'm saying, or at least understand with what I'm saying with pod 1 and pod 2.
So Adam, when you're drawing this, rather than call them pod 1, pod 2, would you just draw, and we may change the language a little bit to make it a little clearer when it goes to the council?
Okay,
But
what do
I
you-
think we know what you want.
The north pod.
North pod and south pod? I'll do that.
North and south on the west side of Sentinel Ridge.
Pass that back to city staff.
I'll just put north and south. I just wanna make sure they have something on their record, because I know how hard this is sometimes. North.
All right, so this one, we do need to address the time period. That's really what you need, right?
I don't think you're gonna put a time period on this, like John said.
I'd say
I
a
think that has to be
recommendation of city
negotiated with,
council.
yeah. Right, that goes in the MDA, and I think I made a note on here that what you want, 48 months and 8 units per acre.
And I think some others may want a little bit more. I'll
Yeah,
be honest,
I would want
I
more
don't
time.
know.
And Adam, just one thing that I want to make sure I understand, because I think it's relevant to this one. So you're stating 546 units in this area with roughly the 15 acres of commercial, so a max of 546
We're
can
going
be
to call
built.
it 14, because 15 sounds like a lot. But yes, 14.
Oh, 14. But that's the max units that can be built in that area in that time. So even if things are moved around, our recommendation is that's the max amount of units.
8 units per acre on that 14.
Okay. Want to make sure I'm on the same page with what we're recommending. Because I mean, I asked that question because,
This many complex motions, I don't know how to make a motion like this.
I know,
It covers
I'm
3
trying
different
to think.
phases of different stuff, so I know I'm putting you guys through a ringer on this one.
but I'm asking that question, Adam, because let's say a school, a church, anything else that goes up in that area, it doesn't change the amount of units that are allowed in this during that timetable.
Yes, so to me.
But that's what we're
So to
thinking.
me,
Okay.
that's why I pulled out that
With the
north
recommendation.
pod, is it's 546, and then the 2 can be massaged to either be commercial, or we have a density cap of 8 units per acre.
All right.
My only thought is it whether you should put the PUD overlay zone up on that piece.
With extending the PUD up to the commercial.
I mean, I know we didn't rezone it, I guess it doesn't matter because we didn't rezone it.
You can't,
So we can't put the PUD over it anyway.
which is,
They just have to come back and do
Yeah, they just have to come back and request it later.
they're gonna have to do that anyway, because I think it needs to be, I still think it needs to be contingent upon the school. If the school doesn't play at all, I think we might need to adjust what we do below.
And I think that's a viable recommendation to the city council. That as a staff and the developer and the school work together, if that's not something that can happen, they need to consider the other option.
My guess is they will talk to the school in the next 30 days before this comes to the council in January.
Yeah.
So we'll likely know better before it even gets to the council.
And that's, I can't imagine the school not doing this suggestion because they get roadways all around their entire school versus them having to build them. So I see them choosing to do it. But I can't say that.
But I
so.
guess my thought is if they talk to the school board, and I don't know if the school board meets in December or what their plan is or what they're gonna throw at me when we're done. But if they go to the school board next week and they say, not gonna happen, my thought is, instead of even taking it to the council, we probably just bring it back to you in January. I don't know if we can do that, John.
You know what, I'm thinking about it more. To be honest, it was kind of zoned for 8 units per acre anyway, so I don't think it matters. If they don't play.
Not for anything on that.
Yeah.
That piece you let it want.
Correct.
They go to the school board in 2 weeks and they say, my only thought was is that we could bring it back to you, we could reconsider it in January, because we would know that.
So I think for the overlay zone for this, all we need to recommend is that council reserves the north pod for commercial with a not to exceed density if it resorts back to residential of 8 units per acre.
That's my concern. If you don't put the PUD over it, then how do you assign density to it?
Well,
Unless it's just straight.
Wouldn't they have to come back for that piece?
well, what she's saying is technically, and Edge couldn't do this because it's not their land. The commercial that they're labeling commercial is the school districts.
Yeah.
So the school district's not saying, hey, I want to do anything there.
But technically,
But
this
technically-
is not the development.
Yeah, technically, there's a piece that is not the development either, so it's gonna have to be fixed.
Yeah.
Chris has a point there. I mean, even, to be honest, the odd angled piece on the north pod,
They don't own
school
the
might
whole
own
thing.
some of that.
Yeah.
With the design.
Right now it is in the school. Right now that is in the school.
I think we're more or less saying the acreage of what that would be commercial is what we're taking out, and we're hoping it can be negotiated that it will switch the shape of it.
But I do think,
That's what I'm almost thinking.
what,
Well,
Yeah, that's what, okay. I think we're all, oh,
what?
okay, we're thinking here.
Okay. I'm glad I'm not the only one that can't say this, because it's too odd.
You always do good with the odd ones, though.
For those of you that are waiting, Wendy's right over here if you want to drop off your, your paperwork.
So would we have to make it conditional to them obtaining that parcel? Yeah.
That's what they're trying to.
You're gonna
Trying
have
to
to have
figure
them.
out how to word it.
But guys, honestly, no matter what, for that commercial, they're gonna have to come back.
Yeah, because they don't own it.
Because it's not owned by them, and it's not a part of this application.
So this is my thought at this point. To put the PUD overlay zone on all the property except the 14 acres.
That's kind of what I was thinking.
But the problem is won't the,
The 9 and the 4.
because this wouldn't
well,
have the.
it'd be 14 acres here.
But the PUD zone,
Well-
right, so you take
You
that out.
wouldn't, you make sure it's an
Technically,
overlay,
it's
so you
14
wouldn't put it
acres,
on it.
however much 14 acres.
But in reality, what we're saying, I sometimes wish we could move your mouse for you. They don't own,
They don't own or control this piece.
but they also don't own where the middle school is now proposed. If you look,
Yeah,
they
that's
don't
a
own that
land
piece.
swap.
They don't, it doesn't matter where they own
Which
it.
means they can't do anything until the school board says okay anyway.
Correct. So to me, that's contingent upon the approval, right? Is,
I'm just trying to make it as simple as possible. If the school board says something, or, you know, if they need to change it,
so best case, school board says yes. We work up a deal. They still have to come back in for that commercial. That's
yeah,
best
we'd have
case.
to come back in to rezone a commercial.
Yeah.
For both pods to be the
But
reason.
if they're gonna hold it for 4 years, and they could come back in 4 years and do a PUD on it?
And that could be tied, it could be tied to the master agreement.
The MDA could take care of that
Amend the
part.
original PUD. You'd amend the original PUD.
But can we still put the number of units in the development agreement,
Yes.
even if it's not?
Because we're only talking 546, because that's why we pulled that out. So you can't actually tie it.
But
Yeah.
how would we do a tie number of units to the other piece, the north piece?
We can't to the other piece.
We can say that the negotiation is that they need to work with the school. To be honest, if they don't work with the school,
This all has changed.
they could take what they're showing now in the school, have that be 8 units per acre. They could balance that out. It's either
Well-
commercial
well-
or 8 units per acre.
Couldn't we say it's contingent on this coming back too?
Yeah.
Would this part have to come back?
But they'd have to come back for the PUD on the 14 acres.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you don't put that overlay on there, but they can do that.
So I think that's all we do, is we put the PUD
No, but I'm
overlay.
saying just contingent on it being commercial.
So we
but-
pull out the 9 acres out of the PUD. That's what I think it is.
Yeah.
But it's got to be, it still has to be the 14 acres. Because they don't own this property in the top left. It has to be 14 acres in what they own, hoping that they switch it to that.
Yeah, I see that.
But we didn't advertise it wasn't part of the application.
Okay, it wasn't part of the application, so it'd be difficult to zone it.
Yeah, and a zoning overlay will have a defined legal description. So you're proposing to remove 14 acres, right?
Yeah.
We've got to know where that goes. It has to have a physical description.
It's that line.
Can
right
we
there.
tie it
description.
to a piece of property they don't own?
Can we say it's west of Sentinel on the northern piece of the property?
Because you're
It's not a
expanding
defined
the
piece of
boundaries
land.
of the zoning amendment than what we had advertised.
So, Chris, I think your resolution actually would be resolved.
Take
because
5 acres out.
So this is what I think will work. We don't do anything, obviously, east of Sentinel Ridge. We only go up what we've deemed the south on that map. The developer still, if the school doesn't work with them, the developer still owns a piece of land right here. Heather can see where I'm circling.
Correct.
They still own a piece right here.
Well, why don't we get a picture
And they
of the
still would
actual
own a
picture
piece.
of what they own? Because this is not shown.
Basically straight up right here.
Correct. So he's saying you just take the 14 acres on the north side, west of Sentinel, north side of that area.
What I'm saying is the north, do your line just one more time again, please.
Right here?
Okay. This green piece, I do not want to have in the overlay zone. That still is the developer's land. It gives us that
Oh, that makes sense.
roughly 4 acres back.
Okay.
So that's where the
That makes
14 total is. And if the school district doesn't work with them, they're going to have to come back in to get that overlay zone added in.
Gotcha, yeah.
Well, technically, we couldn't put an overlay on this anyway because they don't own that.
I think all you should do is
But
exactly what you
it's
said,
holding them
the
to it.
overlay on the east side, and then this south part over here.
But we could have that.
And not do the 9 acres.
And tie it to 546 units. That is my motion.
You have to say that.
I'd like to make a recommendation of approval to add the PUD overlay zone to all property south of Sentinel Ridge Boulevard and, east of Sentinel Ridge Boulevard and the south pod. Only,
On the west side.
yes,
And
as drawn in the map that I gave you.
So it's gone from 105 acres to 96 acres, approximately, right? 'Cause we've
Correct.
taken out 9 acres.
Correct.
Yes, exactly. Ish.
Ish, approximately. I'll second.
Motion by Adam and a second by Andy, and we'll call for a vote. Oh,
Oh,
maybe
you
not.
already made a motion.
we haven't
Is
made a
there a
motion.
motion?
Sure. What do they want?
With all the staff requirements?
With
Oh,
all
yeah.
the staff.
Okay.
That's what they meant.
That's what they meant, that's what you just did.
Yes.
I just,
Adam, would you like
I
to
thought
restate
it
your
was-
motion?
With all staff requirements.
I'll
All right,
second.
motion by Adam, a second by Andy. And we'll start with the vote. Brody?
Yes.
Joy?
Yes.
Andy?
Yes.
Heather?
Yes.
And Adam?
Yes.
And that is the last item on our agenda tonight, but we'll turn to the commission if there's any additional comments.
Chairman,
Yes.
can you just remind the people that it will go to the city council for final approval again?
Yes. So this item will go to the city council. This has not been approved. This is still pending what the city council decides. This was a recommendation to them from this body. Now, the dates are unknown at this time, correct?
correct.
Okay, so the dates are unknown on when this will be on their agenda, but I would take notice probably in the next couple, if not the next one, so.
Not in December.
Not in the next one.
January.
In January, okay. And then we'll turn to the commission for any additional comments, if there are any. Seeing none, our future meetings are Wednesday, December 11th will be a city council meeting. Thursday, January 2nd will be the next planning commission meeting. Welcome in 2020. Wednesday, January 8th, 2020 is a city council meeting, and I'll look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for coming.
Merry Christmas, everyone.
All the other ones.
It's okay.